Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of August 11th, 2016 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available on our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Board Member Benlian?
Here.
Board Member Charchian?
Here.
Board Member Malikian?
Present.
Board Member Mardian?
Here.
And Chairman Simonian. Chairman Simonian is actually running late, and he requested the meeting continue. And in this case, we would need to elect a chair pro tem until he arrives. Is there a motion?
I'll move to elect Mr. Charchian.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Mr. Charchian, if you don't mind assuming the chair pro tem seat. Okay. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on August 4th, 2016. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards.
Is there anybody in the audience that has anything to state unrelated to the items that are on the calendar today? Seeing none.
None, all right. Which brings us to the calendar and staff announcements. Staff announcements include the notice that tonight's first case on the agenda, which would be 401 to 409 Hawthorne Street, which is a new 3-story, 17-unit multifamily residential project, has been taken off the calendar and will be re-noticed for a future Design Review Board date. And apologies, this was something very last minute, but the item is being taken off the calendar, which leaves us with 3 remaining cases on tonight's agenda. There was a request made by the chair to take matters out of order simply because he would have had to recuse himself from the 3rd item on tonight's agenda, which would be a project located at 910 Laird Drive. So if the board so agrees,
Yes, we're in agreement that we'll take items out of order.
Okay,
and take
thank you.
Laird, 910 Laird first.
So I'd like to turn the meeting over to Chair Pro Tem Charchian.
Okay. So I would ask that the staff read the report for Laird.
Okay.
Wait, am I taking it? Yeah, I am taking it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair Charchian and board members. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 3,740 square foot 2-story house with an attached 3-car garage on a vacant 81,296 square foot lot. The property is located in the R1R restricted residential zone, floor area ratio District 2. The existing property has frontage on East Chevy Chase Drive and Laird Drive and is located in the Chevy Chase Canyon neighborhood. Previously, this project was known as 2512 East Chevy Chase Drive because the driveway location was off of East Chevy Chase, but because now it's off of Laird, we changed the address to 910 Laird. But we wanted to make sure everyone still was connected with the 2512 East Chevy Chase address. The neighborhood is characterized by irregularly shaped hillside lots. The property is larger than the surrounding properties with the average lot size of 8,355 square feet. The surrounding homes in the neighborhood are a mix of 1, 2, and 3 stories range in size from 1,465 to 3,729 square feet. They vary in architectural style and street front setbacks, and most have attached garages at the front of the house. The proposed house size of 740 square feet is larger than the average house size of 2,052 square feet, but has one of the lowest floor area ratios for the area surveyed. The house would be allowed to go up to 10,129 square feet per the allowed floor area ratio. The project site, let's see, it's the topography, the lot slopes uphill from the Chevy Chase Street front property line and has an average current slope of 56%. The lot does not contain any blue line stream or primary or secondary ridge lines, but the site is an oak woodland with 24 protected indigenous trees on the property or within 20 feet of the property line. No oak trees are proposed to be removed with this application. The construction of the proposed residence would involve approximately 1,462 cubic yards of grading. The rear and portions of the front and sides of the lot will remain untouched. The proposed residence will be built in the natural slope of the lot following the site's topography. Approximately 88.2% of the site is ungraded in compliance with the minimum required 40% in the R1R zone. A previous proposal was submitted for the site on January of 2014. The planning hearing officer granted with conditions an application for a conditional use permit to allow the construction of a new 4,143 square foot house with an attached three-car garage, and also included a guest house. Approval of the conditional use permit was required at that time for a new dwelling unit construction of lots having an average current slope exceeding 50% and grading of more than 1,500 cubic yards. The approval was appealed by 2 neighbors, and the appeal was heard by the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission denied that application, overturning the planning hearing officer's decision. And if you look on that sheet, the site plan with the
Colorful cloud.
the colorful clouds, the original proposal is the cloud with the black and the green. The green doesn't really show up, so that was the first proposal that was denied by the the approximate location of the first proposal.
So that proposal originally was denied by the Planning Commission.
It was approved by the planning hearing officer, was appealed, then it went to Planning Commission, and that was
they
denied.
Denied the location.
Correct, and that was about
And
2
that
years
was it.
ago.
They didn't go any further than that.
Correct, because it was denied, it didn't come to the design review board at that time. So, at this time, the applicant has hired a different architect and resubmitted a different design. But before that, before this, the applicant was working with the neighborhoods, from my understanding. They brought to the neighborhood the proposal that is clouded in blue, which is more up at the top of the hill, which the neighbors didn't like because of the privacy issue, was my understanding. And the neighborhood preferred the purple cloud on
3B?
onto the side. Yeah, 3B. 3A is where the applicant actually, after having discussions with the neighbors, and the neighbors liked that area the best, they submitted an application in that area. And then after staff, we routed for comments, and the forestry section of the city said that that location was not acceptable. And even if they shifted it over a little, that was not acceptable to them. And then the blue location would require even more grading, because the driveway would have to curve up, which is not shown on there. But for those reasons, staff, determined that the best location would be the current location in order to save the oak woodland area.
Okay, all right. I do have a lot of questions for you, so when you're done, so we'll just wait until you're done.
So the current location is approximately in the same location as the original proposal. However, it's about 400 square feet less, the house size, and plus they eliminated the 500 square foot guest house.
In addition, the orientation of the house was reoriented so that the views were not overlooking the adjoining neighbors, but directed down, angled away from them, and kind of down toward Chevy Chase, basically. So the house is a different orientation.
Yes, the side of the house now is toward the neighbors, the adjacent neighbors, more so than the previous submittal. In terms of site planning, staff found that the proposed house and access road are favorable for preserving the oak woodland environment and protecting the protected indigenous trees present. The house is set back from the adjacent neighbors. The house, as Jay just mentioned, the house is situated with the front facing toward Chevy Chase Drive and not the adjacent neighbors. And access to the property will be from Laird Drive, and the existing unpaved road will be paved for use as a driveway. Staff is recommending, as a condition of approval, that the graded area fronting Chevy Chase Drive would be restored with native vegetation and erosion control. In terms of massing and scale, we felt that the building volumes were broken up with the first floor step back from the garage level and the second floor step back from the first floor. There's a use of front balconies and various tip-roof forms, creating an interesting roof line to break up the overall massing. And that the site grading allows the house to be pushed into the hillside, helping mitigate the two-story volume as seen by the properties to the west. In terms of design and detailing, we felt that the Spanish Mediterranean style is appropriate for this mixed neighborhood. The design of the windows, however, is found not to be appropriate for the chosen style, and conditions are recommended to redesign their placement with openings and to provide sills and external muttons. We felt that the windows opening on the side walls were minimal to provide privacy for the adjacent neighbors. And the quality materials will include clay roof tiles, exposed wood rafter tails, Coronado base stone, and wood-clad windows. The driveways and walks will be tan brown interlocking concrete pavers. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. Would you like me to go over the conditions that are in the staff
Please.
report? Okay. We had the condition to lower the height of the front entry to minimize the monumental appearance, to lower the height of chimneys to provide better overall proportions, 3, revise drawings to show locations of all gutters and downspouts, 4, redesign windows to ensure that the new sash units completely fill the openings, and there is not stucco wall surface at the perimeter. Provide seals at all windows. 6, provide external window grids with a mutton pattern recalling those of traditional Spanish-style homes to provide more contemporary appearance shown on the elevations. And 7, provide appropriate landscaping and erosion control at the graded area at Chevy Chase. Staff did receive over approximately 35 emails in opposition to this project. I believe you each have a copy of all of those. And I gave you a copy of an amended comments from forestry because we received amended comments from the arborist report saying that there are no oak trees being removed, and so forestry is in support of their recommendations now. We do have staff here from forestry if you have any questions for them, and also engineering if you have questions for them. That if you have any questions.
Okay, so open it to questions for staff.
Yes. So my first question, If the original proposal that was proposed in 2014, January of 2014, was denied ultimately by the Planning Commission, where did the roads and driveways come about? Was that permitted? Was there any permits or grading permits or anything?
From what's
Received?
existing now, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering, how did the road and two roads,
I
I guess?
don't know at what point they came into existence.
The
there-
question is, did they pull a permit to build those roads?
I don't know if. I don't.
I'm asking.
Well, whatever was done,
Was done without a permit.
yeah, and
So that's fine, that's fine. I just need to know what we're dealing with as far as what's permitted and what's not permitted.
Yeah, our engineering staff can help with that, and I'm not sure if they knew that we reordered this, so I'm going to run upstairs to try to...
They're here.
Oh, hello, boys.
The-
Sorry.
Well, and if you don't mind,
Yeah, I would
So
like to
you wanna
know,
open it up
because,
to
yeah,
the
please.
extended city staff?
Just extended city staff.
please.
Please come up to the podium, state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Ambayak. I'm the city engineer. I heard a question that
Was there a permit pulled for the roads and the driveways and the pad or a partial pad that it was created?
the paved portion on Laird has been a street for a while.
No, I'm talking about the private road that it's already created, the driveway that is created, that they're proposing right there. And I'm assuming it was there part of the original submittal for the planning commission that it got denied, so,
That's correct. So per our record, there was no permits pulled for that.
thank you.
For the grading as well?
That's correct. Also the grading as well.
Thank you.
No permit.
Thank you.
Okay, let me ask a follow-up question if you may, because I have the same question. In the record, there seems to have been an engineering review that requires a lot of re-engineering of the path, the driveway, and then also the retaining areas. Is that something that you've reviewed, or is that something that your office prepared? I can't remember.
We
if
made
it's
a general comment that grading plans are going to be required. Hydrology and hydraulic calculation will also be required.
I'm sorry, let me reference this. Have you reviewed the Glendale Fire Department Fire Engineering response for this location?
No, I have not.
I have a question as well. The grading that took place without a permit, do we know how many cubic yard of earth was removed?
No.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Yes, actually, I have several.
For the
No,
engineer?
thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Appreciate
sir.
it. So, going to the, I guess the environmental that was approved, or was it approved at the planning hearing, or
it was approved at by the planning hearing officer.
hearing
when-
officer? So when it
Correct.
got denied, what happened to the environmental when it was approved?
It's still in effect.
It's still in effect, even though the project was denied, the environmental was. So the question that I have on page 8, number 3, it says substantial degrade the existing visual character or quality of site and its surroundings. And it says less than significant, and obviously they've gone ahead and done it, and it's almost significant in my opinion. So how does that compare to the environmental that was approved but never gone through the approval process?
Okay, I
Okay,
don't have a
so-
copy, so I'll have to.
So, page 8, number 3, so I'll just write it down if you can let me know. And then,
Here, Kathy.
page 26, number 4. Can I continue, or are you gonna? Oh, So page 26, number 4, substantially alter the existing drainage pattern of the site or area, including through the alterations of a course of stream or river, or substantially increase the rate of amount of surface runoff in a manner which would result in a flooding or on or off site. So the way that I see it, the way that I see the site plan is being proposed, the way that they're proposing right now, it's really cutting off the two natural drain lines that are coming down from the hill. So how does that affect the environment that was approved back in 2014?
It's approximately same, yeah.
So those are the two questions. You don't need to
Right.
answer, but I would like to know before I make a decision. And then, sorry, I have all
No,
these
no,
questions. So
you're doing the heavy lifting,
Okay.
that's good.
So, the amended mitigation declaration, the amended one, that we have the letter. Can I continue? Yeah. So in the second paragraph, it talks about discussion of project changes. So on the third lane, third row down, it says the driveway location was changed from Chevy Chase to Laird Drive because the driveway slope was too steep to meet the code requirements. Generally, that note should come when the engineering looks at it on paper, not it's constructed and they can go and visually see it and it's too steep. Now let's erase that. And so how does that become undone? There's a road that is created onto
Right.
Chevy Chase based on, and I don't
The
think you-
driveway originally, well,
I
that's
don't
part
think
of
it
our
was- it was-
condition
Was
to,
was that part of the planning review approve or denial? That was part of that? Which came
that's where
first?
the original driveway was with the original
Off
submittal.
Chevy Chase.
Off of Chevy Chase.
So that was proposed,
That was proposed.
and the project was denied, but they went ahead and did the driveway. Then they realized that it's too steep.
The driveway was graded prior to the previous hearing, as I understand. I believe a staff person may have neglected to
Okay.
fully assess that. In our mitigation for that, in our conditions that we're recommending, since there's a new driveway proposed, we call for erosion control and appropriate landscaping at that area.
So the question that I have is, nothing is proposed. Everything is there. So there is no proposal at this moment until we finish our hearing. My question is, all of these writing or your staff write the second paragraph again, the proposed residence will be built in a natural slope. Well, it's not in a natural slope. It's already cut. Part of that, it's already cut. So it's not a natural slope. It's already graded.
Well,
So-
just the driveway is graded. The
Oh, there's
location of the
part
house
that.
will be
There's a
graded.
flat area. I mean, I literally walked
yeah,
up, and
yeah.
then there's a flat area, so it's already
That is
created.
graded as well.
So my question is, how does staff look at this? Do they look at that, nothing there exists, and we're just looking at this at, if we decide that we're gonna move the house down to, let's say, 3A or 3B, or even the light blue section, are they going to put back what's there, or what was removed without a permit? Or how does this, I just need to understand what my
My
rights are.
understanding was that whatever was required to be mitigated was mitigated by them, and that was verified by our city attorney. Whatever they were required to put back, they were cleared as having mitigated everything.
Okay.
To put it back as close as it could be put back to where it was before.
So the driveway, sorry for interrupting, so the driveway off of Chevy Chase will be back to whatever originally it was, with the contour lines will be.
At this point, according to my understanding from legal, it already is.
Okay.
Everything's been
I-
mitigated.
I can affirm for you that in my walk this morning, there's a clear driveway, and the only thing that's mitigated is there are sandbags to prevent some erosion on the edge of the driveway off of Chevy Chase.
I think one way the board can consider this issue is in the same way when we legalize work that was performed without permits. And if you look at the driveway ultimately and you think its location is appropriate, and we feel that the driveway coming up from Chevy Chase is clearly too steep to be a driveway, you can recommend any conditions you think are appropriate to look at what's there, and through your ultimate possible approval, then the work would become legalized if you think it's appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So actually, staff, when can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
Earlier, you stated that the forestry did not accept the location off of Laird Street. What was the reason for that?
He could probably best answer that if you'd like to.
No, I'd appreciate an answer on that one. And my other question is, I'm looking at the grading plan, because I'm looking 3-4 different numbers on the grading cubic yard. On the grading plan, which has the blue, the red, and it shows about 6,000 square feet, almost 6,500 square feet of cubic yard removed. Is that including that legal driveways that have been created, or, because in your staff report it talks about 1,500 or so cubic yard, a little less than that, or 1,336. So what number am I going to be looking at today?
There's another grading plan down there, but I believe it's the 15, it's the 14. The colored one may be out of date.
No, Mr. Ryder, I think the concern is, if I understood the concern correctly, there's been a significant amount of grading that's already been done without a permit.
Correct.
The topography shows slope lines that are currently not, if I'm understanding the question properly, the topography shows topography lines that are no longer valid because they've been graded. So we're trying to understand, compared to the 1,336 cubic yards of cut that's going to take place on this property, how that factors in with the cut that's already occurred. Because with the calculation that Mr. Mardian is making, it's like a 6,000 cubic foot cut.
Almost 6,500 based on
6,500.
And convert that into yards, it's about.
We would, what's already done, we wouldn't add that in. It's already from what's going to be done? Is that what
I'm just trying to, with the driveways, what's the total? Or the driveways?
My understanding, it's the 1462.
Okay. And I guess I'll ask the forestry person about the number of trees are encroaching. Based on what I read on the report, there's 12 trees are being encroached by this development.
Along the driveway.
My first question, what was the reason for not accepting the house location off of Laird?
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Jeremy Kahn. I'm the arborist technician. Anne Marie Sheets was my predecessor. She reviewed the plan originally. I have reviewed her notes and have also inspected the site as well. So what I'm about to tell you this evening is a combination of what she had written originally and what I have seen. The site basically in the canyon off of Laird, to put the house there would remove several trees, one of which was a very large mature sycamore, which contributed greatly to the overall forest canopy in the Chevy Chase Canyon area. Also, to affect some other trees up the slope because the footprint of the house would impact the roots of those trees. To answer the question about the impacts of the trees, the proposed site, the most current proposed site, all the impacts would be on the trees that are near the driveway. There'd be no impacts from the house itself because there's no protected trees near the footprint.
Can you tell me which oak trees will be removed if the house, because I'm having a hard time locating all these trees. Based on my site visit, there's one where the driveway turns, and there's two other ones right up here. There's one up here, there's one up here, and there's one up here. Is there anything else in this area that needs to be removed?
For the site being Laird?
Yeah. Is this the one that you're talking about?
No,
And this one?
the large mature sycamore is right here.
Okay.
And then there was these trees upslope
That's an
against it.
8-inch? Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a large one in here?
Yes. And there's actually several along the driveway.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
The initial proposal that proposed the house to be off-layered, the 3A proposal, staff mentioned that it wasn't approved because it was encroaching on the tree on the sycamore, I believe. And she also mentioned even if it was moved, pushed to the side or to the front or wherever, just to miss that, still wouldn't be approved. Is that true? Is that correct?
Correct. And one of the original sites would actually, the tree would be inside the footprint and had to be removed. The other alternative sites would be within the drip line of the tree where the critical roots are. And so in the same effect, we'd just be cutting a bunch of roots off the tree. And it'd be hard to actually keep the tree healthy in that environment.
But just following with that, based on the decision that they have made, or your predecessor made, she has caused them to create a driveway and cut God knows how many cubic yards, impacting how many trees of drip line, including this, by just not impacting one or possibly this tree. Is that something that she had in mind? That she wanted to get rid, not to impact that, but obviously the rest of the stuff?
As far as for the indigenous trees on the site, from what I saw, I felt it was much easier to mitigate the impacts to the trees themselves with the driveway, with different types of driveway designs, and as far as how much you wanted to grade and dig into the ground, as opposed to the foundation of a house and the actual two-story structure that would stand there.
Do you know when they did the grading of the driveway, was city notified, your department notified for any, so you don't know if any of the roots or anything was damaged?
No, that was before my time. However, based on the appearance of the trees, for the most part, the trees on the site appear in generally good condition. A bit drop stress, but there doesn't seem to be any relationship to the trees along where they're graded. The trees near the graded don't seem to be suffering worse than the other trees on the property.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, so I'm going to then open the public hearing portion of the hearing. There are 3 cards from what looks like the architect team. Who would like to come first? Mr. Hagopian. And because of the large number of speakers, I'm going to limit comments from your team to 15 minutes as a group.
Okay, Edward Hagopian, 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. I think the best thing we can do at this moment is to have the map of the engineering department of this lot showing the contours. I have a copy. Unfortunately, I didn't know that it would have been necessary to bring it today. I have superimposed that map, which is aerial photography, that was done long time ago, and the new survey. I superimposed them on top of each other to see how much of a grading has happened there. I don't want to say it is minimum, because I want you to see that map, because first of all, that driveway from Chevy Chase was never graded. Unfortunately, when they submitted the first design by other architect, the planning department of the city missed to ask for the profile of that driveway from Chevy Chase. In all my projects that I have submitted to the city of Glendale, always they ask for the profile of the driveway. They were not asked. This has gone through 2 hearings. Nobody from the planning department said, what is the slope of this driveway? When I was hired to start this project, I studied that driveway, and I had prepared this exhibit. That existing driveway that has been there, and it was not graded once the new buyer was involved in this project. That driveway has 27% average slope. And if they want to design it according to the engineering department standard, which in the beginning cannot go one of a sudden with 20%, in some locations that slope will be 28, 29, up to 30%. And if they do that, it will cut through the roots of the old oak trees there and destroy all these trees. That's why we choose the layered drive for a reason. It was not just because we liked that I wish we could use that driveway, but it's impossible to use. If you want to go into details of this, I will present this later. But without having that map of the engineering department superimposed with the new survey on top of it, I think we should continue this design board today until that map is there so you can see what happened to the grading of this lot. Otherwise, if I talk about the project, that by the way, we designed 2 more locations. May I approach to the
Please.
plans and show you?
The pointing stick is right there.
Our first design was supposed to be, the house supposed to be here, that immediately we found out that this is the worst location to see the swimming pool. The old design was here, not exactly here, it was here. Then we changed that design from here to here. And then we had several meetings with People Homes Association, and they objected with this. So we designed here. As you know, that the arborist of the city of Glendale rejected this location. Then we had another 3 meetings. In one of the meetings, we suggested to have a driveway that will go up here. So it will be away from this properties here. No matter what we did, Homes Association and the neighbors, each neighbor has its own comment about the location of the house. So since we couldn't build here, we couldn't build here, we couldn't build here, we couldn't build here, so we went back to here, which is the view, the windows are directed away from these properties, and what you will see, this is what you will see in that direction, or in this direction.
What is that?
That's the previous plan that was submitted, I think, to Planning Commission.
Now, regarding the size of the house, regarding the size of the house, the size of the house is, the size of the house is 3,740 square foot. Of that 3,740 square foot, 312 square foot is the corridors in the garage. So in fact, the house is 3,428 square foot. So the original design of the other architect was 4,143 square foot plus 500 square foot of guest house. We don't have any guest house. And there is a house in Chevy Chase, not far from this property, 2,500 Chevy Chase. It's 3,729 square foot with 24% floor area ratio, while our floor area ratio is 4.7%. By the way, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people right in that neighborhood supporting this project. Again, I have to ask for continuation of this design board hearing because we don't have that map to show what happened to this grading of this project. Otherwise, you might think that a huge grading happened here, which after you see this, maybe you will see the fact.
Yeah, Mr. Agopian, I understand that you'd like to continue the meeting. I am not inclined to do that at this time. If the board members feel that that information is required for them to make a decision, we will take consideration to continue the meeting until that information is provided to the board. But there's a lot of speakers that have come out. We'd like to hear from them. Are there any questions for Mr. Hagopian?
So, just one question. So, according to what you're telling us, the road was there before the client has purchased. So the road and everything was there.
Yes.
So the amount of grading that he has done is very minimal. Just kind of leveling that, and it's always been there.
I would like to have a document to show that. Otherwise, just simply,
So
if neighbor says no, do you
But
drive?
do you have any idea as far as how much cubic yards was removed?
I am not the engineer. We have the engineer here. He can talk about that. since looks like a sensitive issue here, again, I would prefer this to be continued. When I have that map in my office, but I didn't know that it can be necessary. If you see that these two plans imposed on top of each other, and by color I showed where the cuts has been, you will have a better idea that what kind of, yes, some grading is done there, but not, well, I'm not going
Okay.
to say.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I'm not inclined to continue this because I'm gonna, just for discussion's sake, I'm gonna assume that these drivers didn't exist on my review.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm not gonna.
Mr. Hagopian, we'd like to have the engineer probably come up now, and in the interest of time, so that we don't overextend the 15-minute period, unless you have any other comments.
I will have some more comments, but after,
Maybe after the rebuttal?
yes,
Okay,
yeah, after the engineer that comes.
okay.
Yeah.
David Silverman?
And actually, there's,
Two
after this is
engineers?
done, there's 5 more minutes. I timed it, so that'd be
Okay.
5 and 10.
Thank you.
Or 10 and 5.
All right, David Silverman, 22837 Ventura Boulevard, Calabasas, California. So I'm the civil engineer on the project. It's a very minor grading project in terms of most hillside grading. You raised a couple of questions about the pre-existing roads. Those were there when I took over the project, which was at the beginning of the design phase. Those roads are on the topos that we were given at the time,
What year was that?
2014. May have been in 2013, I'm not actually sure, but the roads were there. Even the little pad area that's there, that is mostly caused by the fact that there's a little canyon that comes down. That's where the canyon levels out. So there was no real pad graded. There was some grading done in the past, but no major grading since we started the project. There's some road cleanup, and that was about it. You talked about the blockage of the natural drainage. There is a natural canyon, I wouldn't really call it a canyon, but a dip in the hillside there that comes down. The hillside, in terms of engineering terms, not that large. The amount of water that comes down is not excessive, and it's easily mitigated. Whatever blockage we put in there is easily mitigated, and we can reroute the drainage. Also, with the current low-impact development requirements by the state, we're required to make sure that there is no impact outside of the project that is different than what is going on prior to the project start. I think that was all the things that you brought up that were just engineering, but if you have any questions.
I have a question. So do you have an idea what's the cubic yardage of grading to be done on this?
To be done?
I mean, put this house up there.
Well,
How many
it's
cubic?
on the plans, it's 1,400 some odd cubic yards.
Which is 1,300 or so, 13.5? Is that the number?
I thought it was around 1,400, but
1336 cut.
36.
So, so from my understanding, what you just told us, that there was very minimal grading done since you came on board, but there was grading done.
He flattened out the road, made it accessible so you can get
Okay.
on this project, so the soils
So
can get there. and do
the
his tests, things
question
like
that I have is that there's about 26 conditions that Public Works has attached. Have you reviewed them?
I've not been given them.
Okay. Part of that has to do with the road erosion, the grading. I'm assuming that you've done this before and you have this experience. So based on your experience and your professional judgment, how much of an improvement needs to happen to these roads to be legal and be able to meet the current City of Glendale Public Works requirements? How much of work that needs to be done?
To just do it,
To bring the road to be legal?
well, it's a driveway, it's not a road, so that's,
Well,
Very
the
different
driveway,
standards.
I would say the driveway.
well, there are different standards depending on if it's road or driveway. There's no, on the side coming off of Laird, there's very little work that needs to be done. We do have to put up some retaining walls to get up to the elevation we need to, so it's a smooth ride. But there's very little
Retaining walls on the low side or the
On
uphill
the-
side?
downhill side.
Downhill side. So the downhill side that has mostly oak trees, so has there been any
Plans
review?
have been
But
reviewed by the arborist.
So the retaining walls, that are there going to be any piles or anything being proposed for the foundation of
I'm
these?
not doing the structural design of the walls.
Based on your experience?
Well, that's just it. Based on the soils report, we can go either way because the bedrock isn't that deep, but there is a small layer of fill on the surface. So it'll depend on which one is more cost effective, but there is no real determination on this where you're like, oh, we have to go down 20 feet to get to bedrock.
Okay. And then one of my other questions was that the placement of the retaining wall for the entry for the garage blocks off the natural drainage, and there's been a lot of letters and documents that there's been a lot of flooding there when the rain comes down, and there's two natural drain that is coming down straight towards the house. Is that going to be somehow mitigated?
Done a hydrology study to look at the amount of flows coming in, and yes, there'll be less flooding once this is done than there is now.
Okay. Thank you.
But you have no swells at all behind these walls.
You have swells beyond the walls.
Not when I'm looking at these.
I'll show you this set of plans that I brought. They definitely show swales behind the walls. It'd be hard to build into those walls without swales.
Yeah, I mean, I would control the drainage somehow.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
He
the
got swales.
grading plan is down below.
Yeah, but that plan, I have that plan, it doesn't show the swells on the top hill. Anyway, those are things that the.
Okay.
Extra plans.
There will be swales behind the walls,
Yeah.
of course.
Any other questions? Mr. Silverman, any other comments? No?
Not this time.
Okay, thank you. All right. We have Mr. Hagopian. Did you want to come up, or did you want Jonathan Flory to come up? Okay. Are we on-
Since
Hagopian, before you start, Vilya, how are we on time?
We actually have a minute to go.
So I think we exclude
Since,
question and answers.
Exactly, because question and answer the dialogue. So.
One of the complaining neighbors has commented that the house can be built right in front of the Chevy Chase. I have studied that case, and I want to show you my studies that it's impossible to design a house. First, because of the oak trees there. Second, the slope and that location is, one portion of it is 136%. The slope is 0.8 to 1. It's almost vertical.
Okay.
And this is the complete design of the house close to the lights. We finished everything.
Okay, for the record, I'm going to extend comments from the architectural team to 5 additional minutes, given that we had questions and answers.
Chair Pro Tem, also, I believe that there's an arborist on the record who has brought a PowerPoint presentation who would like to show that as well. I'm not sure if that would answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
But I'm not sure how you would want to divvy up this
Is
time.
that Jonathan?
Yes.
Well, there's a speaker card filled in, so we were anticipating it. Do we have it loaded?
We do.
Okay.
So if you'd like to treat that as a 3-minute speaker, then that's.
Yeah. I'll do that.
One more comment, and that's it from me. I asked the engineering department to make a print of the map that they have from this lot years ago done by aerial photography, so that you can compare and see if there has been what kind of flat driveway area in that location. I would like to repeat that request again, to make that print and bring it here so you can see, you can compare our survey and the photographic survey that was done many years ago. Please.
All right, so Jonathan Flory, or Flournoy?
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. If you please pull up the PowerPoint presentation.
State your address for the record,
Oh,
please.
sorry. 359 North Westridge, Glendale, California.
And would you like, if you just tell me when?
I'll just tell you when. So, right now, I'd like to talk about a rough landscape plan we have to address some of the neighbors' concerns about privacy between, especially between their pool, which you can see above the purple circles, and our property. We're proposing to plant in many native drought-tolerant screening species in the hillside just below the driveway to provide more privacy for the neighbors. And these include 7 15-gallon Heteromulus arbustifolia, or otherwise known as toyon, 3 Mexican elderberry, 14 sugar bushes, and 9 Frangula californica or Ribosarium golden currant, or yeah, I don't remember the common name. Anyway, next slide, please. And this is just giving the raw details of how big the plants should be as they're going in. In the area that's right by the pool, the toyon bushes will be 4 to 5 feet tall as they're going in, but they have the potential to reach 15 to 25 feet high by 8 to 15 feet. 8 to 15 feet wide by 15 to 25 feet high, which should provide lots of adequate screening. Can you please go on the next slide? This is what this tree will look like. Next slide. This is what the Mexican elderberry will look like. Next slide, please. California coffeeberry. Next slide. Rusovada. Next slide, please. And last, the golden currant. And the next slide, please. This slide shows the view towards the neighbor from the driveway. Now, as you can see, this is a panoramic shot, and to the left and right of the pool, there's already a lot of existing cover from the trees and existing shrubs in the area. Thank you. However, there is relatively less cover over by the pool, and that's where we'll be putting the toyon. Next slide, please. This is the view from approximately where the house will be. And as you can see, if you look down, you don't see very much of the neighbors except at the pool. Next slide, please. This is a similar view from where the house would be, just from a different perspective, looking at the neighbors. And we plan on using slightly smaller size containers right now because we plant smaller size plants. They establish more quickly, and they can actually outgrow plants that are put in at a larger size. So this way, in 3 to 5 years, it's very possible that the plants that we plant now in 15-gallon containers and 5-gallon containers will actually be bigger than if you put in something in, for example, a 24-inch box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you done with your comments?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay.
Mr. Georgian?
Yes.
I have a landscaping plan in front of you, prepared by another gentleman. You mentioned different trees. Which one I'm going to be looking at today? I have a landscape plan. None of the trees that you mentioned.
This is a very recent development after the addendum report from Rebecca Lotta.
Have you proposed this to the city arborist, or are they approved, City of Glendale Fire Department approved hillside trees?
I'm not sure about that. I was brought to this project very recently.
So these are great ideas, but I don't think we should consider these.
I'm going to consider what I'm seeing here today.
Exactly. It hasn't been officially submitted. You haven't gone through the process. So, I mean, these are great images, but how can we look at if it's not, public hasn't seen it, it hasn't been submitted officially, and now it's being proposed. I mean, we need an official submittal. I need you to review that by the city arborist, have them look at it. I'm sure they're gonna need some irrigations. How are you gonna irrigate under the oak trees? I mean, the whole purpose of them not allowing you to build under those trees were not to disturb the trees. Now you're proposing a slew of trees to protect, you know, obviously the visual impact of this. So I don't know. What are we looking at?
And landscape plans need to be revised as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we need to look at that, I think the landscape architect or you present that officially.
So I'm going to go ahead and invite the public at this point. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
For comments. We're going to go in the order of the cards that I received. I'm going to ask you to please limit your comments to 2 minutes. If you hear someone make comments that you're in support of, I also encourage you to indicate that you were in support of those comments instead of having to repeat them, so that we can all go through this process and not have an all-nighter like we did a couple of hearings ago. I'm sure you all are passionate about this, but I don't think anybody wants to be here until midnight. With that said, I'd like to invite Virginia Morano to come up and speak as you're the owner of the property?
Yeah, my name's Virginia.
Sorry, I should have had you included in the group.
You want me to?
of the applicant?
No.
I'm sorry, you've checked off owner.
Yeah, I'm the owner of a house.
No,
so you're a
owner
neighbor.
of
Okay,
the
my
project.
house is right on the
Okay,
corner of.
gotcha.
of
You're a
Chevy
neighbor.
Chase
Thank you
and
so
Laird.
much.
Okay.
And I've lived there for 20 years, okay, so.
Are you
I-
for the project or?
I'm against the project.
Yeah, it's
okay?
not.
I just wanted to I only have 3 minutes, so very quickly I'll tell you, I've lived there for
2
20
minutes.
years.
Thank
I've
you.
really seen everything that's gone on. The path going up there was a footpath. We used to hike on it. He came on a weekend with heavy equipment and graded the hell out of the place. We had a beautiful meadow with all kinds of deer and all. We now have a dirt pit, which is a dust everywhere, and with sandbags, and it's never been brought back. It's just an ugly mess. And 3 people tried to buy this. It's a 20 years, and the last guy was from he owned the Mexican market downtown. He has huge amounts of money. He spent $20,000 doing due diligence. He said the lot's unbuildable. He had his architect, his engineers. Also, Laird has got flooding like crazy. I'm talking tree trunks. I'm talking my car washed out into the street. So whoever puts up there is going to have to do a major thing because of the flooding. And I mean, the project was rejected, and here I am again for exactly the same project. I don't even get it. You know, and no one's explained it to us. I don't know. I mean, it's just very confusing to all of us.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond.
Please.
It's the applicant's, the owner's wishes to reapply again. So
I don't know. And even though it's been rejected, he can do exactly the same thing all over again.
Well,
Can he
he's
just
gonna-
keep reapplying?
I'm not going to have a discussion, but he has a
But I
right
do-
to reapply again.
But I do have a question for you, ma'am. You indicated that he, and you directed your gaze over at that part of the room, and then finished that comment off by saying that he graded
The
using a
owner.
bulldozer. So are you indicating that the owner, who I assume is the gentleman
That's
behind
right.
Mr. Hagopian, is the one that you witnessed
He
grading
brought it
it?
in on a Sunday,
Okay.
and we actually asked him, and he just,
And when was that done? What
It was-
year?
right after he bought the property, I don't remember, but it was on a Sunday, and he brought in heavy equipment.
Okay, thank you.
But I mean, if you look, he's done a lot of things. I mean, he put a fence up and, without, everything's been done without a permit.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
The next speaker card actually has 2 names on it, Morgan and Kathleen Swing.
My name is Adam Bautista. I'm representing Morgan, Kathleen Swing.
Okay,
I'm gonna-
Mr. I'm sorry, Batista?
Adam Bautista.
Yeah, when you're done speaking, I need you to fill out your own
Yeah,
separate speaker card.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
No problem. To the Design Review Board. First, we apologize that we are unable to present for this very important meeting. My wife gave a birth to our first son 2 weeks ago, and I had to return from paternity leave to my position at Universal Pictures today, August 11. We are especially regretful of our absence due to the fact that this project impacts us so directly, even our proximity to the proposed site. When we bought our home in March last year, we were advised this project had received a final rejection from the city. Had we known that a near duplicate plan would be presented yet again, a year and a half later, we wouldn't have purchased this home. As I am composing this statement from the desk in our family room, the story poles and flags loom directly out the window. A forest included in the email. They are towering over our house, our backyard, the kitchen, the bedroom, a bathroom, the family room. The proposed structure is a little straight shot up a hill from our house. This wouldn't be a traditional side-by-side neighbor. Instead, we would be stacked one on the top to another. This allows direct lines on site into our windows and our lives. Even with the highest privacy fencing, this would still be exposed due to the proposed placement of and the scale of this home. We are also particularly concerned about the construction process and its daily impact in our newborn baby, who is being cared for in our home when my wife returns to work. Such an extensive project will cause considerable disruptions in the form of noise, traffic, dust, etc. We are fearful of what would happen to our home as a result of the disturbances to the hillside that have already occurred, and the potential increased risks imposed on our property if this project is approved. Since we have lived here, our lot has been completely surrounded by hundreds of sandbags, aside from being an eyesore. They reveal the negative impact illegal grading has been on the topography of the hillside. The canyon atmosphere that we've grown to love is jeopardized by this proposal. 910 Lair Drive would be an outlier, a structure out of place that would disrupt the character of Chevy Chase Canyon and the signature quantities that we, along our neighbors, are fighting to preserve. We are outraged by the ways.
Your time has expired. I think we get the gist of the letter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Darren Rohan.
Good evening. My name is Darren Rohan. I reside at 2500 East Chevy Chase Drive. My house is right below the vacant lot. As soon as Mr. Moreau purchased the foreclosed lot from Bank of America for $110,000, started to remove all the vegetation from the entire hillside and graded a fire break road into a 12-feet wide driveway illegally. He moved all the dirt to the end of Laird Street, and to this day, he has not restored the hillside to its original condition. I'm against the proposed location because it will take away all my privacy. You can see straight into my backyard, pool, spa, 2-bedroom facing the hill, and 1 bathroom. The proposed house is not on the same level with my house, and a fence would have to be minimum 69 feet high. From my pool side up to the illegal driveway, it's 34 feet, and to the proposed house is going to be 69 feet. So it's way out of it. Way, huge, and which is impossible. The Chevy Chase Association, the neighbors, the architect, the consultant had several meetings to decide on the best location. It did not happen because Mr. Moreau made up his mind to build a house on top of the hill without regard of his neighbors. His architect, Mr. Ed Hakopian, who called the DRB incompetent on 2 different occasions during our past meetings, said that there would be no windows facing my house. Let's assume that is true. Is Mr. Moreau going to be restraining his own house? And how is he going to get in and out and, from his house, except using the illegal driveway, which is facing my backyard and the rest of my house? The other concerns I have is the rainwater drainage. Any amount of rain brings lots of debris and mud. In 2005, we had a big flood. There are 2 weeks of rain, and we had 3 feet of mud on Lair all the way into Chevy Chase, and mud got into my neighbor's backyard, into the basement, and the mud came into my swimming pool. And this is now it's worse since he just shaved the entire hill, and it's it's a mess.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for.
Okay. Next speaker is Babak Nasirpur.
Babak Nasirpur, 2578 Cascadia Drive. I sent an email to Ms. Duarte on August 9th. I don't know if you have a copy of that. I included some Google Map images that showed the condition of the site back in 2012 and up to now, 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. That clearly shows destruction of the hillside and regrading of the areas. Also, as an architect, I believe that the approach to the project architecturally and environmentally is irresponsible. Creating a long driveway to get up natural habitat and grading. All that dirt out of the site just to place a house up in the mountains. Where you have a perfect location, as I indicated on my email, next to the laird, where you have no vegetation, no indigenous trees to be removed, and way less grading than what is proposed. Also, Mr. Akubian referenced the topography from the aerial map that is completely inaccurate. That should not be allowed as an evidence because an aerial photography cannot exactly show the topography at the time. I'm glad that the developers team confirmed our concerns that there are privacy issues, there are grading issues, there are stone drain issues, and all those have to be dealt with, and this development should be clearly denied. I don't even know why the board is considering a location as it's shown.
Is this the material you submitted?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Douglas Hughes.
Good day. My name is Douglas Hughes, 3168 East Chevy Chase Drive in Glendale. I'm not a direct neighbor, but I've been a resident of the canyon since '99. I live in Glendale by choice, and I appreciate the benefits of Glendale, and a lot of these benefits derive from the laws and regulations we have. And even the laws that are fair and reasonable need tempering from time to time, but I don't think that's appropriate for 910 Laird. I don't think we should make a change for this. I think the sheer size of the development and the placement is out of character with the canyon. I walk every day in the canyon religiously. Some of you may have almost run me over. Hi. And I think it just is completely out of place. We have gone over many times the uncertainty of the grading. Uncertainties for planning commissions are not good. They should be a red flag to you. We should deal in preciseness when we're dealing with this. We have a complete uncertainty here. We have uncertainty of the drainage. We've heard people that have direct evidence. And I think this house does not conform to the letter of the Hillside Design Guidelines. And for these reasons, I would ask that you would deny this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Glenn McKinney.
Hi, I'm Glenn McKinney. I live at 2565 St. Andrews Drive in Chevy Chase Canyon. I'm a neighbor, and I just wanted to voice my opposition to this house as proposed. I appreciate your thoroughness and service. My first time coming to a meeting, it's impressive. I would say that the one direct neighbor is not the only neighbor with an impact. I'm on the other side of Chevy Chase, and this would definitely have an impact on our home. And when I was listening, I mean, there's issues with size, with safety, with the slope, and with the spirit of this home in Chevy Chase Canyon. The size, from what we've seen, multiple locations, it's too big for that space. And the safety of this questionable driveway that's been put in, I'd echo that sentiment. And maybe the reason they can't find a way for it to work is because that size just isn't appropriate. That question was asked and answered in 2014. Work went on from there somehow, and then when people are jumping into the project midstream, it's kind of addressed as well. That was here when I got here. To me, as government officials, that shouldn't be acceptable to operate that way, and those issues should be addressed before anything comes forward. So I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective as a neighbor. I can't stay. I've got to get Mac to basketball practice, and so I appreciate you hearing from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brian Duran.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Brian Duran. I live at 2900 Graceland Way in Chevy Chase Canyon. I'm the president of the Chevy Chase Estates Association. You've heard many of the problems. You've already asked questions on what I have already submitted in written form. I'll just very quickly go over the illegal grading makes a topographic assessment problematic. There has been no mitigation. We met with Rubik Golanian. He assured us they would be cited. We were understood the applicant has been cited, but nothing was mitigated, nothing was returned to this date. It also makes drainage compliance questionable just because the grading is different from what the city has in its records. Visibility from across the canyon is not sensitive to the environment. It's going to be very exposed. We have some people here who are going to testify to that fact. Fundamentally, it's just incompatible with the neighborhood. It's larger than surrounding houses, is located up on the hill above and behind other houses, and is going to be looking down on those houses, and I don't believe there will be adequate mitigation by planting trees, et cetera, as been described. It's just too prominent on the hillside. I think that would set a precedent in the canyon that it's not healthy because we have other properties around the canyon where building has not been anticipated. One would have to build a road such as Mr. Monroe did on his own back before all of this started. We heard right away from the neighbors, grading was going on. This doesn't seem right. So this has been existing for a long time. There's nothing new in this to us. This is about the same as it was before the Planning Commission. So we have to think this is, because of the new protocols in the Planning Department, this is more like gaming the system. Submit it again, see if it sticks on the wall. Please note that the neighbors have never resisted development of this property. They've only wanted it to be developed properly. Although it's anecdotal info, we have heard that it was deemed non-buildable before. One last point here is that the owner has always been pugnacious and not really helpful, but he says he doesn't have to be helpful or collaborative with anybody because of his friends at City Hall who will allow him to do whatever he wants. Sufficient to say disregard for the hillside design guidelines are evident in this case, and he's demonstrated his disrespect for neighbors. CCA defends the canyon against irresponsible development. This is a good example of irresponsible development, and we therefore respectfully request your rejection of this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Questions? No. Palma Vincente?
Hello to all of you and to staff. I'm representing myself, Palma Vincenti, and speaking also for my husband, who's present, John Vincenti. We live on Figueroa Street, and we have been residents of Chevy Chase Canyon for 40 years. And I'm also born and raised in Glendale. Several years ago, John and I caught our eye on several Sundays when we saw someone on a tractor going up and down, grading the hill. And we'd seen it on Cascadia, where they cut down a grove of mature oak trees on weekends. And I just want all of you to be aware, what is the restitution that somebody like this, who's so irresponsible, pays when they ruin a beautiful area of nature and they don't have a permit? It's one thing to say it's been done, but it makes me feel that how can this homeowner be trusted if you do go ahead and give a go-ahead to this project? What other illegal measures might he take unless it's extremely closely monitored? So I support everything that the Chevy Chase Homeowners Association has said, but I would just like to find out what happens when somebody is destructive to nature in the canyon and what restitution might they pay. Thank you for your time.
Naomi Nishi?
My name is, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, name and address for the record, please.
Yes. My name is Naomi Nishi. I live on 2570 East Chevy Chase Drive, which is about 0.2 miles from 910 Lair Drive. The property next to us right now is being developed, and anybody who walks on Chevy Chase knows that it is being excavated. The design board had approved to excavate 1650 cubic yards of earth.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second because I need to ask you a clarifying question. The pictures you provided us are not of the subject property that's being discussed today.
No, but it will be.
Your
related.
comments are going to be related. Okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Just want to make sure.
And the design board staff report for this development was stated less than significant impact by all your staff, the design board staffs. And when it said exposure of persons to noise levels in excess of standards, excessive ground-borne vibration, and the staff also quoted short-term noise impacts could occur for this development. The development began in October of 2015. And today, after 10 months period, my canyon neighbors, all the neighbors, are still forced to live with this noise from Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Only day we do not hear this is Sunday alone. Now, the person told us that there's going to be a baby in front of that. But the city is allowing this noise. Now, it's been 10 months. It's still going on. It's probably going on still right now. It will go on till like 6:30, 7 p.m. So the property next to me will probably have to finish because it was allowed by the design board to do this. But I do not want more Glendale Canyon residents to suffer and lose their privacy and quality of life, and our city officials may not realize, you may not realize what is disturbance. I guess it's not noise. It's not considered noise to the staff members at all. But this goes on from Monday through Friday. I am pleading with the design board today, do not approve this project or any canyon project until this is considered or protected from us, us residents. It's gonna be going for 1 year, and that is beyond what you call inconvenience. It's beyond the time period that you can say this is inconvenience. So anyway, so I know the resident in front of this project will be greatly impacted. I don't care what the staff may say. They'll probably say less than significant impact.
I'm going to have to cut you off.
Okay, that's okay.
I
That's fine.
apologize.
Do you have the right?
I will say that was one of the most creative
Yes,
presentations.
it is.
Heard. Sound effects are, I guess, a very good thing. But I do want to respond to your general concern about sound and explain that under the purview of the Design Review Board, we have to go with city and state guidelines as to decibel levels, and those are incorporated in the studies that are done for our review. And if a contractor is exceeding those, or if their contractor is showing up too early to do work and so forth, those are things that you bring up with neighborhood services, I believe, and they will go out and deal with it if there are violations. I understand that you're inconvenienced greatly by construction. I know that very well. 6 years it took my neighbor to build their home. 6 years I put up with that, and then they cut one of my trees down. So I know that very well personally, but I'm here to say that Design Review Board has purview only to review what is in front of us, and on that project, I'm sure the guidelines indicated that they're in compliance. If you feel that they're not in compliance, we have a department in the city that handles that, neighborhood services. They do a really good job, in my opinion, of going out and investigating. So if you have those concerns, I would call them. Okay, thank you so much. Grace Me Whitler?
Graham Whitler.
Graham, I'm sorry, Graham.
Evening. My name is Graham Whiffler. I live at 3235 Cornwall Drive, and I'm a director with the CCEA. I was here two years ago because of this very same issue. I'd been brought on, this is one of the projects that came to the CCEA because it was a problematic development. And at the meeting 2 years ago before the Planning Commission, I gave them these photos. These ones I mocked up myself from using the rendering from the architect. And they were photos taken from Cascadia. And it shows what the house will look like in the canyon. None of those show what it looks like in the canyon. These do. And the Planning Commission took note, and in their findings, they wrote, the location up on the hill, away from the streets, also is incompatible with a neighborhood where most of the houses are close to the street frontage. The visual mass of the house is incompatible with the neighborhood in that the house is up on the slope in a more prominent and visible location on a hillside than if it were situated lower on the property. This is what is being proposed today. You know, it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same mass on top of the hill. We've been meeting with all the neighbors, and the neighbors wanted the house, agreed to have the house put down by Laird. We all agreed on it. The owner wanted it on the top of the hill. I ask you to reaffirm what the Planning Commission found 2 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I didn't want to take a chance. Leah Thorgerson?
Lee Torgerson. It's another unusual spelling. I'm a resident of 2636 Kennington, right across the canyon from this property. In general, of course, I am against the project, and I agree with everything that's been said preceding me. What I wanted to point out is I was on the Planning Commission for 6 years, and I spent 2.5 years with the Hillside Ordinance Working Group, where we met weekly for 2.5 years with architects, neighbors, builders, a number of residents, and hammered out what we thought would be appropriate for putting in the hillside design guidelines and for recommendations to change various parts of the municipal code to specifically to prevent projects like this. The massing is it's too massive. The location is high up on the hill. It threatens to make set a precedent to make the Chevy Chase Canyon look like Silver Lake, and if we wanted to live in Silver Lake, we'd move to Silver Lake. A blight on the hillside, and the last thing is it's a bad precedent for two reasons. Not only is it too high on the hill and it's in an objectionable location, but the whole idea of allowing somebody to come in and grade and have and then come in and put a house right where he graded and say, well, that was already there. It reminds me very much of the fellow that killed his parents and then threw himself on the mercy of the court because he was an orphan. And we don't need precedents like that in the city of Glendale. So, and that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, it's being entertaining so far, but I don't see any more public comment cards. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? You're welcome to come up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the comments from the public and open it for the rebuttal by Mr. Agopian. I'm going to extend your time for the rebuttal to 5 minutes, seeing how there were a lot of comments.
If it is possible that design board has the authority to talk to the arborist so that we can build a house on that other option, we'll accept that. Does the design board have that authority? That's one question that I have. One of the gentlemen mentioned that I have told that design board is incompetent. Unfortunately, that's a lie. Please don't do that. I never said that. There were people in that meeting, in our meeting.
Okay. No cross communication. We've closed the comment period. Mr.
Babak
Hagopian has
mentioned that
rebuttal.
aerial photography is not accurate. I would like to ask the engineering department to say if it is or it is not accurate.
Which photograph?
Aerial photography that we have from this lot, and I have a copy in office and engineering. I got that from the engineering department.
Can I get the aerials that we had on email?
Billy just took that.
I apologize. Did you want the aerial?
Yes, please.
I asked the engineers to make a print. Unfortunately, the person who does that print is not in today. And again, I wish I had that plan to show you the superimposed survey and that aerial photography on top of each other. Some of the comments were that we are on top of the hill. We are not. We are where that house is buildable on all the options. It's what it is. We cannot come close to the Chevy Chase as I showed those plans to you, because as I mentioned, one of the objecting neighbors, which is a part of the design review board, and he mentioned that we should build a house right in front of the Chevy Chase. It's not possible to do that. A comment like this has to be studied and to be accurate, to be technically right. When we have so many oak trees there, and when the slope is really deep, really steep, it's 0.8 to 1, we cannot build a house there. So the only option is left for us is the other option that we designed. We finished the project, and if you can somehow convince the arborist or the tree department that we can plant more trees or do something about that, we'll do it. Now, in our meetings, the lady, that neighbor in Laird Street, was complaining about the floods coming down in that street. That is not a job that the owner of this property has to do. That's a problem with the city of Glendale. It's a kind of valley coming down from the hill to the street, and if something has to be done, that's city's property and city's obligation to correct that. We cannot do anything about that. However, looks like you are not going to approve this project, but I hope you will have something for us to know what should we do.
Are you done?
If we leave this place, we have to know what is the next thing to do. Is 80,000 square foot of this lot is not buildable? Is that what the decision is? Or if it's buildable in that location, maybe you can talk to the tree department to solve this problem. The owner has spent a lot of money so far and time, and we would like to get some kind of recommendation that is possible to solve this problem.
Mr. Hagopian, I'm going to go ahead and ask if you have any other last sentence, if you have anything else. Otherwise, I'm going to open it to questions. Are there any questions? The rebuttal period is over, but since I allowed Mr. Hagopian last sentence, you can have it since you're part of the design team. Come on up, state your name, make your last statement.
My name is Jonathan Flournoy, and I'd like to make a correction. The landscape plans that I was presenting, those were submitted to the city. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm conferring with staff on a matter, legal issue, real quick. Thank you very much for the comments. Seeing no other comments, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it for discussion. Anyone in particular want to start?
Quick question. Was it submitted or not? Do you have a copy of that or not? Is that the first you
Just this
saw?
last week, it wasn't in time for other departments to review.
Okay. So it was submitted, but departments haven't.
Correct.
So, thank you for the clarification. So, this is an interesting case, I think. I think it's an ongoing case that, you know, clearly, Planning Commission has reviewed and denied, and now after many years, it's come in front of us. The big question for me is which came first, the road or the design, the location? I think for me to look at this project, the way it's located and the way that the driveway is created, that according to the neighbors, according to even the architect said that there was some minor grading done, and according to some of the neighbors, there were actually a lot more work done than it seemed to be. I'm not sure, I'm not here to know what the difference is, but work was done. So everybody agrees that work was done. So for me, it's more of an issue allowing something that was done without a permit, without a proper process, with a conditions, 26 conditions, and these conditions that were given to us by the Public Works are designed so that it creates a safety, a safe improvement that doesn't put other people in jeopardy, neighbors in jeopardy, neighbors, and protect the trees and other conditions there that we have existing. So the applicant has decided, or not the applicant, but the owner has decided to take that on their own, even though after the denial of the project, go ahead and grade this, assuming that the location is going to be approved, even though the Planning Commission already stated that it was not an appropriate location. Also, during this time, I'm stating all the facts that I have right now, so I'm trying to make a decision on the fly. But the other fact that I have is that the architect and the owner have met with the neighbors and neighborhood, and they decided, the architect has even submitted a design for the lower portion of the project. And because of the way that it was designed, I'm assuming urban forestry decided that it's going to impact the trees, therefore they do not like the location. But the way it's designed was basically taking out an oak tree and basically going under the drip line. It just seems like you have 81,000 square foot of land, and everything has to be under the drip line of this tree. I'm not sure why. There's already, I walked the site. There's a empty spot there right in the beginning of the driveway that it's avoiding the drip lines, avoiding the oak trees. Why this design wasn't adjusted so that it fits within that area and meets the neighbors and requirements, and we don't create these adverse conditions. And I honestly don't know. There's so many different things that have been said, which came first, the driveway, and then the Chevy Chase driveway, and then a Lear driveway, and it used to be a walkway. So for me, I think without even getting into the design of the project, for me, the site planning is a bigger issue at this moment. I think the way that it's graded, the way the driveway is cut through the earth, for me, I can't just with a clear conscience say that this is the right location without looking at what's the impact of other locations that doesn't impact the oak trees, doesn't impact the sycamore tree. It works with the existing open space and fixes the problem that it was done illegally. So that's what I'm looking at right now. So I'm not sure exactly how I want to go about this, because things have been done. And one of the speakers mentioned restitution, and I'm not here to penalize the, penalize the owner for doing something wrong, but I am here to review the design, and I can't be forced to approve a location based on an illegal work that was done. And we're basically saying that this is the only place that can be done, can be placed. So for me, that's an issue. Also, I did drive around the neighborhood. I did go up by Cascadia. I did look down, and I do agree. And I think the 2014 Planning Commission had a really good point. Most of the homes around that area, almost 95% of the homes that I've gone through are within the close proximity of the street itself. They are hidden within the canopy of all the trees and everything. And I did not see within the 180 degrees that I looked around the drive that I did, there were any homes that were nestled or pushed up against that. So the findings that planning had brought up to deny the project, I still tend to agree with them in the way that they have designed the project and the way that it was done in 2014. It still sits the same location, the same shape, basically. So at this moment, I'll pass it on until we have more to discuss.
Mr. Benlian, or?
Okay. I concur with my colleague's comments, but based on my review, I'm going to look at this lot that these driveways did not exist. So based on my review today, I see the obstacle from Chevy Chase. It's too steep, too many oak trees. You can't come in from there. But I see an option from Laird. Now, with the exception of the encroachments. Now, staff report says we're encroaching into 12 trees. These 12 trees that are encroaching with this new driveway, there's still going to be a lot of work done to it. So with the retaining walls you mentioned, and I think the best location for me to approve this project is within Laird Street, and it avoids the mass that it overlooks the neighbors. And we've done it several times. Mr. Hagopian has done it several times. Even built as close as to 5 feet to these oak trees. And today I hear, no, we can't encroach too close. We've approved projects that have encroached within these trees several times. In fact, we also had projects that 1 or 2 oak trees were removed and replaced by other oak trees as a mitigation measure. So I don't see why we can't do that in this particular case. And if I may add to my comments, this is another, if my colleagues recall, this is another Colina but on larger scale. We have the same siding, and it's overlooking 2 neighbors. In this case, the driveway is even longer and more intrusive. So I don't want to see a repeat of Colina again. I'm honestly saying this to ease off the process. We could be going back and forth for several times, and you know that, Mr. Hagopian, and I don't want you to do that. We'll have to find a way to place this house closer to Laird. And in addition to that, as part of my conditions allow, restore the hillside as originally was. Now, you could still do it. The fact that there was an intention to create this elaborate driveway from one end to another, it even gives me doubts, how could a person do this, without going through all this, going through this agony that he's facing. But he created this program. It's not Mr. Hagopian's fault that this house is located. He was directed by the applicant, I'm sure, or the owner. And, this is the best location they feel it fits their needs. And unfortunately, I have to concur with the Planning Commission, decision that this is not the appropriate location for this house. Even further, this house gets so closer to the secondary ridgeline. We're getting closer and closer to the hill. And that's where I'm having this obstacle about locating this house in here. I think, you know, the neighbors have said it. I think even one of the letters said they have no problem locating the house on there. Actually, one of the person had a, part of his submittal had a location for the house. But I think the forestry department should work with the applicant, trying to satisfy, not necessarily to find a common ground to put a house in here and yet, you know, satisfy the neighbors below. Now, I think that's possible. We've seen it. And as presented, I'm not ready to support this project today.
You know, if I may, if had a choice to look at the proposed project, the original proposed, and that prior going in front of the urban forestry, I think my argument would have been that if we place this house at that location, we may have impacted one tree only, versus now that it's impacting 12 trees. Now, how it's impacting, I don't know. But, you know, retaining walls, fixing the road, I think there must have, I mean, they're very logical people, and they would have seen this. I mean, the way that it was designed, obviously, it was impacting, it was going right up to the property line. But I think he would have been able to move this around to be able to place this so that it won't even impact one, even any of the trees. It would have been placed properly in that downhill. So,
Yeah, well, these 12 trees off of the driveway, their encroachment, this driveway is not the final condition, you have to understand. The transition, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hagopian, the transition has to still be worked out. Because based on the grading plan, with the blue, he's got fill and so forth coming to make this transition work, or the slope work. So there is much more impact that, you know, I feel on these other oak trees than impacting one oak tree. So I just hope and wish that there would be some common ground between the forestry and the applicant to locate this house in this place and off of Laird, and with some encroachments to the tree. If one tree goes, you know, you replace it with other trees. We've done it before, you know. I know it's not the best practice. It's not protection, you know, frenzy, but I feel that, you know, there's more impact on the driveway oak trees versus one. And I'll support a house located off of Laird. I know Chevy Chase is hard. This central location will impact the neighbors. You know, there's no way to screen this. Yeah, I could see the plans. There's no windows off of the, you know, that elevation, with the exception of the entry door and a couple of small punched openings. And that's not the proper way to approach it also. So with that, I'll see what my other colleagues have to say.
I tend to agree with my colleagues on the comments they previously stated, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to repeat all of them. I just want to say that in its current location where it's sitting right now, it's impacting the two neighbors right adjacent to it. It's also impacting all the guys that live on the canyon on top. As Mr. Malikian stated, I took the drive up as well, and when you look down, I can see the story poles. It was like that's the only thing standing. So that the gentleman that provided that photograph, that's pretty accurate. That's the view I saw. So I will not support the project where it's sitting now, but I think of Laird, I'll be in support. It's a beautiful, beautiful design. I like the material. I like I like the style. It's a beautiful house. Mr. Hagopian always does beautiful homes. So just, I have an issue with the location. And that's about it.
Okay. So I agree with that, those last comments specifically. I think that the house, as designed with the materials, is a very good design. Not for this lot, not for the actual conditions that we have here. As far as relocating the project potentially to Laird, I think that forestry was probably most concerned about the large sycamore tree that I saw this morning. And I'm assuming that that was the main concern. I'm actually going to kind of ask that as a question. Was that the sycamore was the main issue, was it not?
Correct, the mature sycamore in the
Yeah, and I think it's like probably 100 or so year old sycamore, just judging by the trunk size. So that's not as easily replaced. However, I do think that if the homeowner was a little bit more conservative in the overall mass of this project as proposed, he could achieve a buildable project on Laird, avoiding the sycamore. But the project that was submitted as not in front of us today, but a project that was given as an example of what was previously submitted, is still a 3,600 square foot project with an 1,800 square foot first floor and a 400 square foot garage. So it has a huge footprint still. And I think you can, with a footprint that large, you can work with it to mitigate it. I also think that a potential single story would also mitigate some of the concerns about views from across the canyon, because the canopy of those trees can, I think, shield some of that if this was a single-story project. However, like my colleagues, I am not prepared to support the project as submitted today because there are things that are greatly concerning based on things that have already been mentioned, but for me also this issue of the grading. I mean, the canyon, when it does rain, and it doesn't rain very frequently, but when it does rain, is subject to a lot of issues, and we need to make sure that that's dealt with. And it seems like there's even active citations on the property that haven't been addressed. I mean, there's a lot of things that give me pause to go forward with a design that could potentially increase harm to the context of the trees and also to the neighbors, safety issues as well. Mr. Hagopian had requested that we continue this matter on the board's motion versus a redesign, so he could submit and supplement some of the things that have been missing today. What do we feel on that issue?
I think we've done it several times and it backfired on us, and I'm not willing to go there.
Yeah, I think the continuation was to give us the document that for the grading, before and after grading document. So I think we're okay. And I think,
it's not going to change much. The
whatever,
location still doesn't work.
even a truck went up there, the work was done, in my opinion. The work was done. Everybody agreed. Neighbors agreed. Applicant agreed. City knows, and everybody in an agreement. So right now we're dealing with a site that has been illegally graded at whatever level, and we are being asked to look at the property in a sense that it's there. We have no option, and that's the site location. For me, I don't think that's a right location, and I think we can, as I agree, I agree that portion of the lot brought back to its whatever the condition that was done. And as part of a good faith, I would recommend the applicant to submit some sort of a grading plan or something that will show that there's been effort being placed that is going to bring the current non-conforming conditions of the site to be consistent and more current with the City of Glendale Public Works requirements. That there is a list of 26 items, I believe.
Okay, any other comments? Concerns? Okay, so I'm going to then close deliberations and entertain any motions that you'd like to make.
I'll make a motion to return for this design, do site planning, this location.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Mr. Duarte?
We have a motion by Marty and second by Ben Leon to return for redesign.
Roll call.
Can we read the conditions?
conditions.
So before I say
Yes.
yes or no?
Am I doing conditions or is
I can try to do, it sounded like there was really one major condition, which is to revise the site plan to shift the location of the house to the Laird location, to work with the urban forester to minimize impacts to those trees, but possibly allow the removal of some of those trees with appropriate mitigation. I would recommend a condition to restore, working with the forester to restore the driveway to a more natural condition in the areas where it's not being used as part of the new development. I'm not sure if I heard that, though.
I would join in that, and I would say that the condition should also be for the illegally excavated driveway that will not be subject to potential future approval. The mitigation plan should go into effect for those areas, specifically with that grading that goes along the driveway. Those 12 oak trees should not have their roots exposed or have water potentially exposing their root systems, but when it does eventually rain in Glendale. So I think there needs to be mitigation. I think there needs to be, as my colleague said, good faith mitigation efforts put into place.
So one more other condition that I would like to add on, a thorough review of the environmental report as it was approved in 2014. And I want to make sure that it's still a valid environmental report, even though there was an amendment filed. But at the same time, there was illegal grading done. So somehow or another, that grading, the quantity of the grading needs to be included, in my opinion, into the quantity that we're going to be approving or not approving, or whatever the environmental report is going to be. I think that is a valid condition, that so we know what has been done. And I don't know if it's even possible, if there's any existing records or not.
I would say that, I would support that, but with the caveat that we allow the applicant to do good faith mitigation.
Right.
For example, if the driveway on Chevy Chase has been graded, if there's a mitigation plan that's acceptable to forestry, then we don't count that grading against the net number that we would consider.
But what happened? It just disappeared between the environmental that they submitted and now, and there's that.
No, it's not going to disappear, but.
So I just want to have some record that something has been done, and that's recorded. And if they come back the way that we wanted, neighbors are happy, we're happy. If we approve it just in case, then we have the record showing that this was removed and this is what we're approving, and that's.
It can be an estimate.
I mean, it can just be an estimate. Just for us.
Contour lines are there, they can figure it out. I mean, it's not.
The relocated project will require an addendum to the environmental, so all of this will be included in the new addendum, including any new impacts to trees, and also taking into account the trees along the driveway and how they'll be treated if the driveway is restored to a more natural condition.
And I would recommend the landscape plan that was proposed for that to still be looked at, or they need to modify.
So
we didn't see.
Staff and forestry will review the new landscape plan.
I'd also.
Based on the new location, I don't think that would be needed.
Is that all?
No. Mr. Milligan, did you hear that comment by Mr. Benlian about the landscape plan not being needed to be reviewed because based on the new location, it would not be relevant?
It was mostly to cover where the driveway is going to be, which is no longer going to be there.
The concern that I had when I walked up the road, I don't know what they're going to propose in their fixing plan. I want to make sure that based on the illegal work that the property owner has done, the neighbors that have been living there by right do not get penalized for the security issues. So I think that landscaping is a requirement. But I don't know if it's the right landscaping, so I need the urban forestry till we don't have a landscape architect, so I would rely on them to look at and tell us if it's appropriate or not. But I do want to make sure that whatever they propose, the neighbor gets fully screened with some landscaping, if possible, under the trees, if there is a way that we can do.
Yeah, I think in the new location, the house will likely be screened from views from across the canyon much more by the existing tree cover,
Right.
but the neighbors will focus on appropriate landscaping.
Last condition that I would suggest is that engineering take a look at the any fire department recommendations.
Yeah, I didn't
Because
read
Laird-
that. I didn't get to read out
Yeah,
loud.
because Laird is in some respects, a fire access road as well.
They're already recommending that, or suggesting that one side of the street be painted red. That's part of their,
Yeah, we already have their comments, but we could I assume, Vilya and Kathy, we'd reroute this as a new site plan and get comments back from all of the agencies.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, the sun's moving. I'll move a little further back. Okay, with the conditions read, or are we concluded? Ms. Duarte? Are we done with
Just
the
roll
conditions?
call, right?
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Benlian,
Yes.
Malikian,
Yes.
What are we saying yes to?
Mardian. This is return
Is
for,
it- but have you
return
finished, have you
for-
finished the reading the conditions for the record?
I believe so.
Okay.
Okay. Board Member Malikian.
Yes.
You said Mardian
yes.
and Chartian.
Yes.
This is return for redesign 4-0.
Oh, I have a request for the board. Those that submitted photographs or handouts to the board, if you don't mind coming up, just that you can put down your name on the handouts that you've submitted during the meeting, please.
Here are the handouts.
One?
Here's the copy set of the handouts.
Do you need those sound effects, Celia?
Yeah, well, sounds like, Jonathan?
Is that part of the record, Barrister?
I tried to do that and.
If it got picked up, yeah, it was probably in the,
Was it?
did they have the permission of those construction workers? No, I thought it was, I didn't know what it was at first. I thought there was some disturbance in the. That's right.
Take a 5-minute break. Do you mind having a 5-minute break?
I think it's moved a little bit.
Sure, 5-minute break.
And I have no upper body strength.
Okay, folks, we're going to take a short 5-minute break. Please keep it to 5 minutes.
Just mark down submitted. Okay, we are back on the air. Let the record show that Chairman Simonian has joined the Design Review Board, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to our chair.
Good evening, welcome back. Our next case is PDR 152-7052, and our case planner is Ms. Azadi. Go ahead, take it away.
Good evening and thank you. The applicant is proposing to construct a new two-story, 3,118 square foot single-family house with an attached two-car garage at 1723 Sombra Drive. The property is comprised of 2 undeveloped lots totaling 9,330 square feet with approximately 91 feet of street frontage and is located in the R1 single-family zone, floor area District 2. The project site is located along the north side of Sombra Drive at the terminus of the road and is adjacent to a secondary pedestrian access point to Glorietta Park. There's an existing driveway easement along the westerly portion of the project site that is tied to the neighbor located at 1719 Sombra Drive. The project site is currently vacant land with a total of 13 coast live oak trees on site. An indigenous tree report was prepared for this project and reviewed by the Urban Forestry Department. A copy of the report, as well as the recommendation from Urban Forestry, have been available on file as part of the public record. 3 of the 13 oak trees have been approved for removal, and 3 have been approved to be pruned. To date, staff has received several written emails and letters in opposition of the proposed project from immediate neighbors. All comments received have been provided to you either in your packets or today. The applicant's proposal to build a new house on this project site is exempt from CEQA review as a Class 3 new construction exemption in accordance with state law. As proposed, the project complies with the development standards of the R1 zone and no variances are required. In terms of site planning, there are existing conditions on site that include the 13 oak trees, the recorded driveway easement along the westerly portion of the lot, and the curved front property line that influence the project site planning, as well as the proposed development of a 2-story home. The new house is sited towards the easterly half of the project site in such a way as to address zoning regulations and the site constraints while also minimizing the removal of oak trees. The project site is located in the Verdugo Woodlands neighborhood, which is primarily developed with single-family homes in a variety of architectural styles. The existing homes along Somber Drive consist of single-family homes with detached garages towards the rear. While the proposed attached garage is not consistent with the predominant neighborhood pattern, staff feels it is appropriate based on the site constraints of the property. The new driveway proposed consists of permeable stone pavers, and a portion of the driveway has been minimized to 9 feet to minimize further impact on the adjacent oak trees. The street features 1-story homes with an eclectic mix of architectural styles. As such, the proposed craftsman-inspired style of the new house will be appropriate. The proposed landscaping does complement the development of the site, and it features new drought-tolerant landscaping, with much of the natural vegetation on site being maintained. As it relates to the mass and scale, the project does not relate to the predominant neighborhood pattern. With the exception of the property at the rear, the predominant neighborhood pattern features 1-story homes under 2,000 square feet in size. The adjacent property to the rear is 2 stories tall and about 2,200 square feet in size. The applicant's proposal to build a 2-story house is appropriate based on the site constraints already noted. However, the proposed 3,118 square foot size is large in comparison to the surrounding context and out of scale with the neighborhood. Due to minimal building setbacks, there is little relief provided between the first and second floor. As such, staff is recommending a condition of approval that the design be revised to reduce the square footage of the house on the first and second floor and to step back the second floor from the first on all sides. This will help minimize the mass and scale, especially at the west and north sides, where the height and boxy appearance overwhelm neighboring properties. The roof forms do not reinforce the design concept. The first floor features a hipped roof form that, while consistent with the proposed craftsman-inspired style, they do have awkward termination points along the east and west elevation. The west elevation, the first floor roof terminates at the end of the building, with the second floor directly above. The roof at the east elevation terminates at the garage, where it should continue to the rear and south of the property. Staff's recommended condition of approval requiring the second floor to step in further from the first will help address this issue and allow the roof form on the first floor to wrap around the entire house. Furthermore, the use of 2 roof pitches is inconsistent with the chosen style. Upon addressing the condition of approval regarding the massing, a single pitch, preferably the 3 and 12, should be considered. The north and south facing gables feature vertical wood siding and eave brackets that are consistent with the chosen style. In terms of detailing, the chosen neo-craftsman style incorporates appropriate siding and detailing that reflect the architecture. The front door is located within a recessed entryway, providing visual interest to the front elevation. The wood material with partial glazing and side lights for the door is appropriate. The new windows will be white fiberglass with external grids and recessed into the wall openings with wood frames and sills, which is also consistent with the style. The materials proposed include hardy plank cladding, asphalt shingle roofing, and a stone veneer at the base of the columns at the front entry. The new house does feature a balcony at the second floor that's located along the north elevation. As proposed, this balcony creates a privacy issue for the neighbor at the rear, as it does look over into their backyard. Staff is recommending a condition of approval that this balcony either be omitted from the plans or the applicant consider relocating the balcony to face the park. For the record, as it relates to the privacy concern, the property owner at the rear at 1720 Willow Drive did request that the DRB members visit the property to view the story poles for the project. I believe you all received that request. In addition, the owner has also provided staff with photos of the project as seen from his property. These photos were provided as part of the staff report, and they were up there. And there they are.
I just need to put this on the record that I did go and met with the property owner in the backyard, so it's on record.
Okay. Staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions as noted in the staff report. That concludes my presentation, and staff's available for any questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Adi, a question is, since there was so much discussion about indigenous trees with the previous case, very quickly, are trees being proposed to be removed?
Yes, three of the trees are being proposed to removed as they lie within the building footprint. And 3 are going to be pruned. The 3 trees that were approved for removal, they were analyzed through an indigenous tree report, and as I understand it, the property owner would be required to pay the appraisal fee for the tree as a mitigation measure to the city.
That's the $92,000?
I believe so, yes. And our urban forester is still here if you have questions related to the trees.
There's no replacement, in other words.
As noted in the forestry comments, I believe there are no options for replacement on the property. And the fee was the alternative provided.
So let me get this straight. Even though the previous project is closed, from my understanding, the option is there for applicants to, instead of redesigning, they can pay the in lieu fee of estimated cost of the tree, and they can replace or remove the tree with the pay of the mitigated cost, whatever the negotiated number is.
With the forester's consent.
With the forester's consent.
But if I may add to that, I think the overarching principle, though, is that if the lot is large enough or is appropriate for reforesting and mitigating through additional plantings are preferred over monetary sums. And I think that's why we're not seeing a requirement to replant on this lot, because it's already very heavily wooded with oak.
But it's a very good comment to bring up, just
No,
for
it's a very
clarity.
important,
I mean, I'm kind of lost in the other
arbitrary
even
kind
though
of-
we shouldn't be talking about it, the entire project would completely redesign because the
One tree
urban
might have been
forestry recommended not to impact one of the trees or 2 of the trees, and the entire hill is graded, and then this one, literally the entire site is impacted with 12 trees on there. So I'm just
If I may respond to that, the intent of the indigenous tree ordinance is to preserve these protected indigenous trees and respect the right of property owners to develop their properties in regard to the benefits these trees provide to the property owner as well as the public at large. In the case of Chevy Chase, certainly there are alternative sites on the property to place the house where no trees will be removed, which would be the most severe impact.
Right.
Whereas with Sombra, there really from what I read, the Arbor's report and what I saw on site, there really are no alternatives on the site to putting the house and not removing trees.
Okay. Can I ask questions? Now that you're on, I have some questions. On the report, there's no indication that tree number 12 is being removed. Am I correct, or am I missing something?
You're asking this from the urban forester,
Forester,
or from the planner?
whoever can address this.
Tree number 12 as it's seen on the site plan or on
Well,
the
I'm looking at the
indigenous
appraisal
tree
report or indigenous. They're all the same. They're all number 12. They're number 12.
Oh, they are? Okay, because I know on the site plan and then the site plan from the report, the numbers, some of them are...
Okay, so let me point it out.
I think she means on the
I just want to make sure we have the
I
right
think
one.
it's on the survey, this one.
That's supposed to stay, in my understanding, if I'm
But-
reading.
It is supposed to stay, if I'm not mistaken, and Jeremy can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's one of the trees that would be pruned as part of.
That's one of the largest ones on site, and you're building right up to the trunk, so I'm not sure. How can that
Line.
stay? I'm just trying to understand this.
So, based on the arborists of record, their report, as well as what I saw on site, if measures are taken, and if the protection measures that are produced in the arborist report are followed, I think you can have the tree on site and have the house as designed.
So you can actually build right up to the double trunk of whatever the size this thing is. This is probably the largest tree on there, so it's like a humongous tree.
That would be well within the drip line.
Yes.
No, they go up to the trunk, like hitting the trunk.
No, and I wouldn't, it would, I don't think it's hitting the trunk. I mean, as far as rule of thumbs.
This is the trunk right here, if you want to come up.
That's a dimension line at the trunk?
No, I mean, look.
That's the tree trunk. That's a tree trunk.
So, no, but this dash line, it's like right there.
That's the balcony line above.
Right. So I'm just wondering, there's a foundation, there's a post there, and it's right there. Not the dimension line, but the dash line, the second floor line. So is that okay? So you think that it'll be okay, right?
So you're saying this is the pad of the house right here? or is
Well,
just
this
the second-
dash line, that's the post, and these are the double trunks, so it's right there.
Yeah, as far as if it doesn't interfere with the trunk or the canopy significantly, and it's obviously not going into the roots because it's above the ground, then yeah, then they
Got
both
it.
can coexist.
And number 11 is not being removed, right?
No. I believe that the two that are being removed that actually sit within the footprint of the house itself.
It's these
Right next to,
8 and 9.
Got it.
Okay.
That's all I want. Thank you so much.
And 10.
Okay, do we have any more questions for staff? With that, we'll go ahead and start the public portion of the hearing, and let's try to limit conversation. So we'll limit speakers to 3 minutes each, and the applicant would get 5 minutes because of the time that we have, and if you need more time, we could adjust for it in the rebuttal period. Craig Phillips, if you would come up, state your name for the record. Welcome.
My name is Craig Phillips. I reside at 2123 Vestal Avenue in Los Angeles, California. I am the structural engineer and the designer for this project. The owner sends his regrets he can't come here today. I want to thank you for your time and for this hearing. I also definitely want to thank Vista and Jay specifically for their assistance through this process. And ultimately for their recommendation for approval with conditions. Obviously, you've heard those conditions. From my take of it, there are 3 major ones: the privacy concerns from the neighbor to the north, the square footage, and the architectural setback concerns. The owner and I spoke about it, and we are certainly willing to accommodate the balcony removal off the rear. We would probably likely turn that into a patio cover, which would further less impact that oak tree as well. We can remove the posts far wider apart so that they don't impact that, and hopefully that addresses the privacy concern. The square footage and the articulation are a more complicated matter. 1723 Sombra is a very unique lot. It is the largest lot on the street. It is a double lot. It has 13 oak trees, and the lot's location is at the end of a dead-end street. So all of this contributes to its uniqueness, which enables certain things. It enables us to have a potential square footage of 3,750. We're far below that. The location of the lot greatly reduces the viewing of the property from the public. The oak trees also prevent a large footprint and truly controls the placement of the project, as Vista mentioned. There are extremely few lots that are like this one in this neighborhood. It's an outlier. Comparing it to other lots on the street is not as straightforward as it seems. We did find one lot that is very similar. It is number 1626 Willow, just a couple lots over. It is also a double lot. It also is adjacent to the park. It is also the last on the street, and it contains a 2-story, 3,219 square foot single-family residence. So there's certainly precedent in this neighborhood for a house of this size. Square footage and floor area ratio are certainly good indicators of size, but they can be misleading. I'm an engineer. I love numbers. But as you heard, the previous architect, he got the square footage of the previous house down to 3,400 square feet. Right? He considered the basement portion to be hallways, and through the magic of numbers, he got that house to be equivalent to our house, when in my eyes, there clearly is a very large difference. In addition, the square footage calculation that we use now is definitely different than the past. The area above stairs and volume ceilings are counted as twice the square footage, so that we are losing 213 square feet due to our balcony stairway on the interior, square footage that likely would not be counted in older homes. Our house is larger. I don't dispute that, but I feel that we've shifted the center of mass and shifted the majority of the square footage to the north and to the park side of the property. You can see it in the floor plans behind you. It's the most hidden area, so when you look at the house from the front, it does indeed have a large setback, and you can also see that on the second floor plan, the amount of roof that you can see looking down. We are retaining 10 of the 13 oak trees, including 5 very large ones in the front between Sombra and the residence. This is going to provide a great deal of blockage from the street, in particular along the articulated side. When you combine these two things, the house will not feel nearly as large as the numbers belie. It's truly, in my opinion, a modest house in comparison to the homes that are being built today. It has no grading, there's no retaining walls, there's no underfloor parking. The impact to the environment is actually quite minimal when you consider other homes that you are seeing. I ask you to listen to the words I'm saying, to accommodate for them, and to use them in your judgment today. I thank you for your time. I don't know if I have any time left, if you want me to wait for questions, but I can take some now.
I have a question. These red, well, let me ask you this. Tree number 4, I don't want to read through this. Tree number 4, is it being impacted? Or is it being pruned?
Tree number 4 is being pruned.
And tree number 11 is being pruned, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
As well as tree number 5?
I believe 5 and 7 just minor pruning.
So you said that you will remove the balcony debris on that?
Yeah, it would just be a shed roof or hip roof covering that patio.
Sure, I had a question. Your foundation, you got so many trees, so many roots. What do you have a soil report? Are you going to do a removal and recompaction?
No, no removal, recompaction, probably natural soils, embedment 24 inches. We probably anticipate a slab foundation with turn-down footings.
So 24 inches is your excavation, you're telling me?
Correct.
I don't see it possible, but...
I believe the layer of fill is very, very thin on this lot.
You don't have a soil report at
Not
this
yet,
point?
no.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Patricia Belmont. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Belmont. I am the owner and resident of 1714 Sombra Drive. The project at 1723 Sombra Drive is too big for our street of homes. At 3,118 square feet, it is more than twice the size of the largest of the 7 homes on Sombra Drive. It is over 3 times the size of my home. Parking is a problem on Sombra Drive. Due to the age of the homes, not all of the existing homes have adequate parking, so there's a lot of street parking when people have multiple cars. There is a potential for utility problems with an additional house this size. I've been told that the city-owned sewer in the street is at capacity. And what about the electric, gas, and water? Because it is an old street. One block, very unusual. The lot is unusual. The block is unusual too. It's one block and dead ends at the park. I'm glad to hear that we will be keeping the access to the Glorietta Park because that's important to me. Cutting down the trees is a concern as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil So.
My name is Phil So. I'm the owner and occupant of 1722 Willow Drive. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, single family, and it actually, our backyard is not quite adjacent to the subject property in question for development, but a 2-story house would easily overlook our entire backyard, where I have 3 young kids play every weekend. And part of the draw to that house was the fact that we had a park right next to, behind our home, and the fact that you had this lot of beautiful oak trees that are clearly visible from our backyard. I believe the development would alter the feel and the view of the residents in that area, as these oak trees have protected that lot from being developed for decades. And so to reconsider sort of the spirit of not developing that lot over all these years with a home that's easily twice the size of the largest home on the street, to me, I think is wrong. And so I'm here to protest the development because I feel my privacy, the privacy of my family would be in jeopardy. And so I hope that consider that. And if anything, I realize we can't alter the development of homes, given sort of the need for housing and whatnot. But at the minimum, I hope you guys would scale down the size of the planned development so that it more fits the neighborhood. Thank you.
Next speaker, and I might not have the name correct, is Yvonne.
It's Yvonne Marchowski.
Marchowski. Good evening. Welcome.
How are you? Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I too want to say thank you so much to Vista and Jeremy because they've been so helpful in helping us understand this process and how you work and what needs to be done in order to help this house fit into our neighborhood a little bit. I actually live at 1720 Willow Drive, and I'm the property that Craig mentioned has the big privacy issue with this house. My house sits all the way at the back of the lot, 5 feet from my fence and 10 feet from their house. Those are my family room windows and my kitchen windows. So a second story on the house not only looks into our backyard, but looks directly into our living space. I would, of course, like to see it not have a second story. I think that would be the most ideal thing and the thing that would make it fit into our neighborhood the best. I'm also concerned about the oak trees. Some of them are quite large, and although we've all understood for as long as I've lived there that you can't take out the oak trees and you can't build within the canopy or the drip line, obviously this house is going to be within the drip line of these trees that the builder is saying they're going to prune. Well, pruning them, I don't know if that assures their survival, what mitigation will be taken if the trees die. Who's going to supervise that pruning? How are we going to make sure that this is done correctly and that those trees are preserved? We live in Verdugo woodlands. That is the purpose of our neighborhood. That is why we live there, is because of the trees. I appreciate your time so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stanley?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Board. Myrna Stanley, Verdugo Woodlands West Homeowners Association. If I could just make the initial comment that, boy, what a lost opportunity for this lot. You could have really had a charming single-story or story-and-a-half home on this wooded lot, and it would fit into the neighborhood and be compatible, and you'd get as much money as you would as as this design if it's if approved. I wanted, for the sake of clarity, well, first of all, I want to tell you that however you decide this project, you have to add a condition about the staging area for this project. There's no place for construction vehicle. The street, I was there this afternoon and about a month ago. I'm not sure the street is 10 feet wide, and there are no sidewalks. And you can't put it on the property because of the oak trees. So you can't put your construction vehicles on Kenyatta. So this is really a thorny issue. I doubt very much the city would allow him to put it on the park property, but that's you need to address that. I just want to tell you that I agree with staff's conditions, but I don't understand how they can recommend approval based on just making a statement that the mass and scale needs to be minimized by reducing the proposed square footage of the house. And you have to look at that. These draft conditions are so significant that somebody, even if it's just a couple of you, have to look at it, because you don't know how they're going to interpret your directives. So I would really appreciate doing that. The other thing is, thank you for eliminating the balcony on the rear. I don't know the windows. I don't know which elevation I'm looking at, but there are privacy issues for the tenants to the rear. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this project?
A couple comments if I can.
No, we've already spoken. However, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this? Okay. With that, I'd like to call Craig Phillips back. You're going to have a rebuttal period of 3 minutes. Keep things short unless you need to elaborate on them.
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Regarding the parking on Sombra, it is certainly an issue. We are providing 2 covered parking spaces as well as a long driveway. We feel that that's going to accommodate both the occupants of the house and any guests that come to visit them. So we don't anticipate increasing the parking needs of Sombra at all. We are indeed set back 1 foot. I'm sorry I didn't correct this earlier, but the second floor is set back on the west side 1 foot to allow for that roof projection. The privacy concerns, I think I addressed those. I hope I addressed those with the balcony removal. The actual windows on that elevation are just for the master bathroom, so it'll be a tub, very, very low occupancy in the tub, and people will be sitting down when using it, as well as the master bedroom. So also very, very low occupancy. I understand if it were a living room or something higher in demand, but these are the 2 of the lowest occupancy rooms that we have.
Question.
Yes, Mr.
Actually,
White.
2 questions. One is, I see the easement and AC pavement on the west property line. Is it something that neighbors can allow for the staging to access from the driveway?
I don't know the current ownership situation of the adjacent lot. I think it's 1719 Sombra, but that pavement is part of their access to the rear garage of that property. It is potentially a staging area.
So my second question is a difficult question.
Okay.
And let's see if you can answer it. Being an engineer, did you design this as thinking how to engineer this?
I did.
And so you basically created a box, which is the simplest way of engineering this. Therefore, all the trees come out so that you can put in the box in.
I disagree. I don't believe it's a box. We're set back on 3 of the elevations. Really, the only elevation that's not set back faces the park, which has 100% coverage of trees. Actually, no one can see the house from that angle, which is why we shoved the majority of the square footage back into that corner.
Okay.
I have a couple questions, but I don't know if you were done with your comments.
Yes.
I believe, let's see. Oh, I also spoke to the owner about construction staging. He's adamant about maintaining access to the park. That's one of his priorities during construction.
My question is, hypothetically assuming we approve a 2-story project, what mitigation would you do during construction to avoid affecting the canopy?
I can't
During
speak to that.
construction.
I'm not the arborist. I'm also leaving the project at construction administration, so this is the extent of my involvement. But the canopies are fairly tall. I don't know exactly what they're going to do in terms of mitigation.
Is this a project, I'm sorry, your comment leads me to ask another question. Is this a project that the owner is planning to build?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
But you're leaving
But I'm just the designer and the engineer. In terms of actual constructability, in terms of material purchasing, in terms of project management, I'm not involved with the project.
But you said you're leaving the project, so...
No, just in that capacity. I'm not involved in the CA.
All right. That's all I have for now.
I'm going to follow up on Mr. Charchan's question. I noticed the owner's name on here. Hall is, maybe you know or maybe you don't, did he develop those 3 lots on La Crescenta?
I don't know.
The reason it sounds so familiar because we had a lot of oak trees on that property. And the last house that he did, then he promised us that no encroachments on the oak trees or, we're not, but I was there during construction's neighbors were complaining to me. And when I went and looked at it, these oak trees, the limbs were really projecting into the framing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to face with these kind of situations here?
I can't speak for Robert. I don't know if it's the same Robert Hall. I don't know what he's developed in the past.
He's not the same one? Okay, I apologize then.
It's okay.
Because I don't want to run into that problem.
It's a
I still
common
have the
name.
pig.
So one question I'd like for you to address is Ms. Stanley's question on construction staging. How are you going to achieve construction staging, and what do you have in place as far as thought process?
It's still something that we're reviewing.
Any ideas?
The actually adjacent lot is one of those ideas, yes. The driveway runs the full length of the property, and the easement that we've granted them extends out into ours. There's very limited oak trees over in that area, so we think it's pretty ideal, but I can't.
Do you have a right to use it?
We'd have to ask the current occupant if we can.
Okay, but I'm so sorry, can I add to that question? Construction staging isn't just about, drop-off of supplies and so forth.
I understand.
It's about ingress and egress and all that. So has that been considered given I took my small car this morning because I knew that was going to be a narrow street because I've been there before. And I didn't take my larger, truck-sized vehicle because I knew I was going to have a tough time getting out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So have you considered that, or?
I believe Robert is considering that, yes.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? With that, I'd like to close the public portion. Mr. Malakian, you want to start us off again?
Sure. So I did visit the site. I actually went on the, I took some pictures as well, and one of the questions that our city arborist addressed was number 12. And I did go around the back, and I looked at the poles that were placed. It's very, very close. It's very close. So I'm not sure the proposed design, the way it's done, it's really taking in consideration the entire lot itself. I think there's other solutions. I think the proposed design is within the street itself is going to be twice as big, almost twice as big as the homes there. Even though the neighbor right behind, it's almost the same size as well. But we're looking at the same, within the street itself. So I don't oppose the size of the home, but I oppose the boxiness, the way that it's designed. And I think there are ways that it can be designed that it would reduce the impact to some of the trees, at least 2 of the trees that I think, and I can put my sketch up there, and so everybody can see. And I hate drawing over people's drawings, but just to convey my idea, my thought. Again, I apologize. I didn't want to draw over your drawings, but I just want to convey my thoughts so that at least everybody's on the same page. So the way it's designed right now is that the garage is sitting back. This is your setback right now. So what happens if the actual garage, first of all, the garage is a little bit deeper than normal. I believe it's 21 feet, so it goes down to 20 feet. And this garage moves forward. So it just clips the 25-foot setback. So therefore, what you've done is you've created, it's almost, I would say about 10, 12 feet. So once this thing moves over, then what you can do, if you superimpose these trees, I would say probably one of them is somewhere around here, and the other one is somewhere around here. So what happens if this balcony and this whole thing shifts down, and instead of creating this overhang, this turns on this side. So your building does this. And so you're avoiding the removal of this tree and then the other tree, whatever the dimension is. So you literally removed the impact of those two trees. You've stepped away from this space that is literally right against this fence right here. You can also create another section here, which is, this is like all open. I don't know why it's not being used. One of the neighbors, or I think it was Stanley, mentioned, why aren't we utilizing some of this property? You know, why can't we just kind of create an L-shape design? This thing is overlooking, opened up, overlooking these. So there's different options rather than looking at this square box. To me, yes, it is stepping back a tad bit on this side, but it's definitely the spacing, the orientation, and the way it's designed. It's not really taking in consideration of what's around there. It's basically the design came first, and then let's mitigate and deal with some of these trees that is being impacted. You know, one of the trees to be removed, that's fine. The pruning, I don't know what the impact would be on these. I don't know what the impact are these. From my understanding, the roots are the drip line of the oak trees, correct? So that's an assumption of the roots that are reflection of the roots. So pruning some of these trees, I don't know how much, you know, what the impact of that would be. I would probably, if we go with this, I would put a condition of a special foundation or something there, which I think will definitely reduce the impact on these trees. But in overall, I think I'm okay with the two-story, but I think it's over-designed for the space. It's actually being pushed within the property, and whatever is in front of it is being removed for it to work. So I think it needs to be designed as much as possible with the trees, with the forest of trees that we have there. And I think that would definitely help the bigger picture, the overall. I think it's just going to massage the second story better, less impact to the trees itself. And this way, I think it will reduce a tad bit on the square footage as well.
Thank you, Mr. Maleki. Mr. Charchi?
Sure. I'm actually very hesitant on a second story. The neighborhood does have a few examples of second-story homes. However, the overarching theme in this neighborhood is small lots, small homes, and just because you have two adjoining lots, and we can't consider them to be one lot, you have two adjoining lots, and the combination of that allows for a larger home. But the context here of this woodland area, this very pristine woodland area, I think is very hard to go into the second floor and not disturb the canopy to the point where you're harming the additional trees. Now, forestry says what it says, but we've had a lot of tree loss where, you know, there's been pruning, and pruning goes too far, and then a year or two later we have a dead tree, right? So I'm very hesitant, and I think I need to be persuaded that a second story is workable. So if, if a second story is workable, I need to see it where it's not such a massive boxy thing. Because I was out there this morning as well, and I walked the perimeter. I didn't go too deep into the property, but those story poles go straight into the tree line, and I do agree with you. They're very, very close. So that's a concern. I think that the neighborhood context needs to be visited carefully. Glorietta on down, there's, again, tiny homes, tiny lots. I think that the roof forms need to be revisited. I agree with staff's comments on that. I think that the balcony being omitted is good, but now we have the suggestion that it could be a patio cover, and well, that needs to be studied from the affects of what that would do to the tree line. Because again, now we're getting rid of the balcony, but we're still close as far as the footings go in supporting that. So I'll reserve the right to comment some more later, but I want to hear what what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Mr.
about the project as well.
Mr. Mardian?
Yes, sir, thank you. You know, I concur with the comments that my colleagues are making. You know, I did visit the site. I didn't go to from the neighbor's side, but I did go all the way to the back. And it is those story poles and the drip line very close. I mean, we're trying to squeeze this house. Now look at the house design. I know you're trying to do an economical engineered home, but to me this plan looks like something from a magazine or ready plan that you took. But yeah, I mean, and you wanted to squeeze this into the slot. And to me, it's not working. You have this woodsy property, and I think you can create a different shape site planning, you know, just like what Mr. Malikian is mentioning, whether it's an L shape, utilize that other corner. But I think it's very close. The mass and scale I have an issue with. I don't object to two-story. 1.5 story is fine. And I think a low-profile home versus a, you know, this particular style gives you a larger mass, where I don't think it's appropriate for this particular lot. This neo-class, you know, neo-craftsman in this particular style, it's too boxy. There's a lot of good examples in the neighborhood itself, maybe not necessarily on the street, that do have craftsmen, you know, setting the building back from all sides, working with the, you know, with the mass and scale sensitively. But, you know, my main comment that I want to make, you know, it's no disrespect to staff. You know, I look at this conditions that you say, okay, we approve it with the conditions, you know, mass and scale. You know, and I agree with one of the speakers. If, you know, we're not seeing that plan, so how could we say, okay, we approve it? You know, and I highlighted every paragraph you mentioned about mass and scale and so forth. So, you know, why would we suggest approval when this is a substantial design change? You know, there's a lot of design change that's going to take place to meet this condition, and I don't think that's, you know, something that we don't have to see. I think we need to see that. I'm just being a little cautious, not approving projects that have such conditions that require substantial change. And, you know, I'm not against two-story, but in this particular case, yeah, you set this building back on the second floor from the street, but that's about it. There's no uniqueness to this design, and it just doesn't work with all these oak trees, and you know, you're so close to the drip lines. And I understand the applicant is an engineer, but I think you're too close to these trees with these foundations, and you will face issues, in my opinion. And I'm not ready to support this project as it's designed. You know, I think the design should be more sensitive to the site, to the neighbors, and utilize the property in a different manner versus, you know, here I take this box and squeeze it. And that's where I'm having the problem. And with that, I'd like to hear what the rest of my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Marty, and Mr. Raymond.
I agree with my colleagues' comments, and even though the lot size is not that small and it's larger than the surrounding lots, and I believe it's 9,000 and change, I believe that the house is a little too big for the site. And when I mean for the site, I don't mean for the 9,000, I mean for the space that you have where you can build this. And that's where I think some of my colleagues are having some issues of the boxiness and of setting back. And you mentioned setting back the second floor, but we're not talking about like setting it back a couple feet. We're talking about like really setting it back, and at different angles where you have this is basically two boxes, and one box is just like set back a little bit from the first floor. And I don't have an issue with the style you picked. It's a nice style and it could work. I don't have an issue with the second floor. I think it could work. I think you just need to rework the orientation, similar to what Mr. Malikan was suggesting, something that identify within the context of the site. But that's about it.
Thank you. I agree with what's been said. It's been a long night, so I'm not going to reiterate everything, but it does seem as though there was a kind of a very efficient mindset, and the idea was to put the efficiency into the site. I do think more of an L-shaped building would work better with some courtyards, and that if there is going to be a second story, it could certainly be done, a portion of it, not the whole thing, in which case there'd be a lot of relief. And these kind of lots, kind of a mid-century modern home could fit really nicely in there. It has a nice kind of feel to it. You kind of have the courtyards that will get built around it. I know you're shaking your head, but it's an overarching theme you're hearing from the board, so you might as well listen to it. You're here. That's our intent, is to try to help applicants and give direction. So I think that kind of concludes the thoughts. So we entertain a motion, or would we like to go over the conditions that staff has written and talked about?
Mr. Chair, before we do that, I wanted to join Mr. Mardian's comments about this lot being very a unique lot, and the conditions being something that we might want to see again. I don't know if I'm prepared to condition this for approval without looking at it again.
Yeah, and I don't think the board is leaning that way, from what I've gathered at least.
I'm not inclined to approve it at this time. That was just a comment. I'm glad you picked up on it.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, but just for future, I just wanted to bring that out in the field, because the condition as stipulated is a substantial change. And I don't think, we should recommend approval on such conditions, because it involves the back side, the front side, the rear.
I agree.
So, and I don't want to give hopes to applicant that, okay, I have enough, planning department is recommending approval, and hoping, okay, we're 90% there. But in this case, it's not working for me. That's my, again, no disrespect to staff. I think we need to, these kind of conditions, it's on the overall design, from 3 sides or whatever. It's not just one area, that's what I'm getting from. We've approved a lot of projects with 20 conditions in the past.
Yeah, I think if it was just massaging the facade or stepping back, but I think there's a lot more to it. I think the site planning and looking at the design and impact to the trees and other conditions. So I think we're same page.
And so, does the board feel as though we need to go over the conditions as stated, or do we think it's clear enough just to?
I think
it's clear.
It's clear enough.
We have to. So I'd like to entertain a motion from somebody.
No, we I think have to have the.
It's important for us to hear the conditions from you.
Please.
I'll take care of this. Staff hears your concern about our lenience with our approval with condition recommendations. It is, after working over many meetings with applicants, something we are very used to, finding the issues that we think are the biggest issues, drawing them to the board's attention, and we generally tell the applicants that we think the board may return this for redesign. And we never take any personal or staff level sadness if you do a return for redesign when we've done approval of the conditions. We can become more cognizant of your concern about that and perhaps change some of the tone. But I think in general, we're working with applicants towards something that can be approved, hopefully with your conditions to move things through the process.
And just to add to that, I think that we're also trying very hard to work with staff and also applicants. When I first saw this project, I thought it was not buildable. I saw the trees, I'm like, how is this going to go through? And I'm hearing from multiple of my colleagues that they see ways that this is workable. So
certainly see.
But this is I think constructive.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of conditions, and a few of these are going to get repetitive. I'll try to skip the ones that obviously are. The board is looking to see a less boxy design. We're looking to see a redesigned site plan and massing that's going to reduce the impact on the trees. One suggestion was to move the garage forward toward the setback to free up some area, to change the site plan so that it's possibly an L-shaped plan that's going to move into the kind of area to the northwest without trees. There is a mention of possibly shifting the overhang at the rear toward the Glorietta Park side of the house to change the massing as it faces the direct neighbor to the north. There was general agreement that a second story is appropriate here, but it seemed there was consensus that the second story has to be considerably smaller than what we're looking at, which will help relieve the boxiness that we have. There wasn't full consensus on whether a second story is appropriate, though, so if you could make sure that we're clear that we can give guidance to the applicant in that direction.
I think I was in the minority on that opinion, was I not?
Yeah.
Mass and scale works. I have no problem with the second story. I mean,
okay.
You know, we've done it before. I mean, I'll give you another example that is still going on. Buena Vista. This is similar to Buena Vista.
Similar feel.
Yeah, I mean.
Let's not talk about a non-agendized topic that's coming to you soon.
Oh, my goodness, it's coming.
Oh, no.
We
source
we want the design to be more responsive to the neighborhood context. That could extend to a change of style that might produce a massing and site plan that's more in keeping with the area. We are style. Repeating something, but we'll include this in our discussion. Are conditions that when there's a second story, there need to be significant setbacks at the second story. Second story shouldn't cover the footprint, basically. And then there were some staff conditions. The first one about mass and scale, I believe, is addressed in your comments. The roof forms will likely change in the new design, so conditions 2 and 3 will eliminate. The balcony we've already discussed, and the applicants agreed to eliminate that. And we have a condition that the applicant must comply with all mitigation measures identified in the Forestry Department's comments, dated July 13th.
Okay. Could someone entertain a motion?
Motion to return for redesign with the conditions.
I'll second.
Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Chair Simonian?
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you.
Yep.
Motion in second?
Sure.
Motion was Mardian, second.
Our next case is PDR 160-8993.
This is yours. These are yours.
152 Western Avenue.
Did you draw them?
Ms. Zimaditis, take it away.
Yeah, you had. Those are.
Just let me know. Chairman Simonian, board members, the case before you, as noted, is a project involving the addition of a new 788 square foot second story and a 92 square foot addition on the ground floor to an existing one-story house and attached two-car garage on a 547 square foot corner lot zoned R1 in the horse overlay zone. The project also includes alterations to the northerly and westerly elevations on the ground floor, demolition of the illegal enclosed patio connecting the house and the existing stable, and modifications of the stable structure in the northeast corner of the property. You can tell by the site plan, the subject site is an odd-shaped corner lot located on the northeast corner of Riverside Drive and Western Avenue in the horse overlay zone. The lot is only approximately 5 feet wide along the easterly side, along the alleyway, and then it flares out towards Western Avenue. The property features currently a 1,251 square foot single-story house with the attached two-car garage fronting Riverside. And there is a detached stable that was permitted in 1963, constructed on the northeast corner of the lot abutting the alley. The property also features a fence. If you noticed, if you visited the site, there is a picket fence all along the front property line, 0-foot setback. This fence was permitted under a standards variance that was approved back in 1964, so it's allowed to remain. And this particular project is exempt per CEQA as a Class 1 existing facility with exemption pursuant to the state CEQA guidelines. Okay, so as noted in your staff report, it was broken down into 3 sections. One would be site planning, the second would be mass and scale, and the third would be design and detailing. Now, in terms of the site plan essentially will remain pretty much the same as the existing, except for the modifications along the northerly property line, which would be to provide a 5-foot required setback. Because they are going 2 stories up, they are required to provide a 5-foot setback. So they are cutting a portion of the house off in order to meet that required interior setback. They are also removing the illegal patio enclosure that was between the garage and the stable. They are modifying the stable to provide a 5-foot required separation between the stable and the garage. They had applied for an administrative exception to maintain only a 4-foot setback. That administrative exception unfortunately was denied by the planning hearing officer, so they are required to provide the full 5-foot separation. There was also the discovery made that and this is long ago, not knowing when, that the existing garage that is currently attached to the house was constructed as a detached garage. So essentially there was an entryway that was enclosed between the house and the garage, and even though it's there right now, they are legalizing it as part of this particular project. So that would be the extent on the ground floor, and other than those modifications, the site plan essentially remains the same. You're going to have the main entrance and the garage fronting Riverside Drive, and the modifications to along the interior of the house and the stable. And as noted, the front yard fence can remain, and any landscaping that is removed as part of the construction is going to be replaced with drought-tolerant landscaping. And there was a site plan. No trees are proposed to be removed. All right, there are no protected trees on this lot as well. So, that point made, we go on to mass and scale. Again, this is a second-story addition to a 1-story house. The overall height will be 23 feet to the top of the ridge. In this particular zone, the maximum would be 25 feet for a 2-story structure, with an additional 3 feet in height allowed for a pitched roof. They are well below the required or the maximum standard. The 2-story residence will be the third second-story house in the 300-foot neighborhood survey of single-family homes, and one of the largest in terms of the floor area ratio, okay? That aside, the project's mass and scale, in staff's opinion, will not be incompatible with the surrounding context. Now again, the site is a corner lot. It has a very wide Riverside Drive, Western Avenue, major thoroughfares. It has a lot of buffering on these two sites. There's also enough clearance between the home to the north and the subject property, and then you have an alleyway that separates the properties to the east. So there is a lot of buffering that sort of allows for that second-story addition and the massing. Also, the ranch-inspired architectural design and the use of the horizontal siding at the base helps sort of provide a horizontal emphasis, so it's a little bit cutting down as opposed to having the more vertical aspects of it, and it is pulled back on multiple levels. So again, there's certain portions with the juxtaposition of certain volumes. There is a sort of a little bit more play as opposed to just having a two-story boxy structure, as noted, not recommended by the board. Last but not least, the design and detailing. Again, the proposed residence has been designed with ranch influence details that are appropriate to the neighborhood. Again, this is the Rancho. You're talking about low scale, one-story homes, primarily ranch influenced homes. So the design itself features a combination of board and batten siding combined with horizontal siding and stucco-on elevations. Again, there's a variety of materials. Wider roof eaves, window surrounds with wood sills, wood guardrails and posts. The stone chimney is being maintained. Front doors with side lights, and you'll notice here, this would be the elevation facing Riverside. The entry, if you drove past it, it's really nondescript. By having the second floor roof overhang, it provides a little bit more of a covered front entryway. They have a few more posts. So it's a little bit more defined as what was previous or what is existing currently on the property. More of a focal point entryway on Riverside. Color scheme for the proposed residence focuses on fern green stucco walls, accented by rust-colored siding, and that's contrasted with the off-white trim fascia and the dark brown roof shingles. Again, the color palette's much more vivid, more earthier than a lot of the neighboring residents. But again, the darker colors help blend with the natural environment and are appropriate for the ranch influence design. Design and detail has been found to be consistent around the building on all elevations and appears compatible with the high level of quality in the Rancho neighborhood. That concludes staff's presentation. Staff wanted to bring this to you as opposed to an ADR simply because it is one of the larger homes and it's introducing a second-story addition in an otherwise single-family, low single-story residential neighborhood. But based on all of the proposed site plan, mass and scale, and design and details, staff supports the proposed project and recommends approval, no conditions. So, any questions?
Questions, are we having an issue with 50% here? Or?
No, there were calculations that done actually, and they are under the 50% threshold. We made sure that the architect can provide those calculations.
Because the whole roof is coming out almost.
It is, but the existing walls are being maintained and whatnot.
So the walls are making it work?
Correct. So they fall within,
I was gonna
under
say
the
that
threshold.
garage doesn't work if that's the case.
No, I know, yeah, there would be a lot more nonconformities that would have to be brought up to code if that was over the 50% threshold.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I was wondering, and this board actually helps me understand it better, how they're going to treat that chimney, because that chimney is pretty low currently. So they're going to build it up with a I guess that's called a fluke, copper.
Correct.
Now, as designed, that doesn't look
Or
like
this
it.
case.
That design and this detail don't correspond. So is it this or is it that?
I believe that's the material, and this would be the design, but I'm going to have the architect answer that.
Is this the actual real fireplace?
This stone fireplace is the one that's in the photograph.
Well,
and
we can
let me
ask
grab
him,
those
because
for
It's
you,
an
so-
existing condition, but it was low, so my thinking was, how are they going to maintain it?
Yeah, we can talk.
Okay.
Well, I am unable to find the speaker cards, but, there they are.
There's only one.
Yeah. Mr. Khodedadi, come on up. Welcome, and thanks for bearing with us for a couple hours.
Oh, and here, these are the photographs.
My name is Nari Kodadadi. Office address is 417 Arden Avenue, Suite 115, Glendale, California. I am the designer of the project. The chimney, the fireplace is existing. The stone we are going to keep, and we are extending it with a copper piece on top of it. It's not that. That was just a sample.
Is this a wood-burning fireplace?
It is.
It's an actual fireplace.
Is it going to have those circular elements on top?
Yes, something similar to the rendering.
I think once you go through the building department and the fire department, you're gonna know that you need to have a 10-foot
2 feet.
distance. 10-foot distance from the highest point, so I don't know how you're gonna be able to extend that. So that's gonna go above the roof line, the way it is.
If we're 10 feet away, it can...
No, it needs to be 10 feet away from any roof line.
Ridge.
A roof line, so any structure, yeah. So it used to work when you had a flat roof, but now that you're putting the second floor, that's gonna go much higher.
We've worked on projects where the fireplace was converted to gas fireplace, but they have to make changes to the
Right.
firebox so that it can never go back for
Right.
wood burning, which could help the look here.
Exactly.
Yes. Any more questions, or?
No, are you done with your?
I am, yes. I'll be here for...
I do have a couple questions. So I understand that so when I went to the property, I expected to see the lower portion as kind of outlined there, the existing single story as outlined there. But the actual existing single story, as you already know, is doesn't really look like that. It's basically cosmetically significantly different, right? So my question is, how are you and if you go over 50%, changes, you trigger a bunch of conditions.
Right.
So how do you not go over 50%? Can you explain to me what calculations you've done and how you've...
The calculation
How are
I
you
did,
managing not to go over 50%?
Kept all the existing exterior walls.
Okay.
And we took out the roof. So by doing that, we stayed under the 50%.
And
Demo.
have you checked the existing walls for termite damage, wood rot, and so forth? Because I want to, if we're going to approve this design, I want to be able to know that that's what's going to be.
Owner still lives in there, so we haven't really opened up walls or drywall.
Okay. Well, we could maybe ask the owner if he's ever had termite issues or anything like that.
And for the record, the calculations for the 50% threshold limit were included as part of the design review board packet on sheet A 2.0.
I should mention the walls are CMU walls.
Sorry?
The walls, existing exterior walls are CMU block walls, not wood.
Thank you.
Now that you bring it on, another question for me. How do you know what these walls are? Are you going to X-ray them to support the second floor?
Either that or post and beam design. We did have an engineer out.
So everything is going to be done internally?
Yes. Gonna.
You got a challenge there?
I know.
Thank you, Mr. Khodedadi. Next speaker is the owner, Shant Minas. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Shant Minas. I live at the property and also work in Glendale. I'm a geologist. Myself and the architect, Narig, we sat with Vilya and Jay a number of times, and we tried to design something that I like this design. And I think Narig did a great job, and we tried to incorporate the comments from the city staff as much as possible. The question on termites, like Narig said, the house is a CMU wall, so they're staying. We did do when I bought it last year, I did a termite, the enclosure when they did the bug. So I don't
You
have.
had it tented.
I did, yeah. I had it tented for a couple of days, whatever it was. But other than that, I don't know of any issue like that. So that's
The
all.
reason we're questioning, Mr. Chair, if I may, because the percentage that you have on 2.0 is 46%. We don't want to have an issue that you're going to be removing, then you're back to this board with a whole new house.
No. That's the staying
It
is
happens all the time during construction. I'm glad you mentioned termites.
That's why it's at that's why I brought it up, because it was at 46%, and one wall with issue, and one building inspection later, and you're back here spending a lot of money. And so we're not saying this as a negative thing. I'm saying this as a precautionary issue,
Yeah,
because we've seen it before.
I've seen it
We
too,
had
I
it
know.
in the Woodlands I think Capistrano or one of those
Yes,
streets where we had, it was
Capistrano,
Capistrano, where we had that Spanish that
That's right.
triggered a 2-year delay in construction because they encountered dry rot and termite. So this is a very, very serious issue, given the condition of this property. And since you're the recent homeowner, I mean, this was not a well-maintained property. I don't think that the prior owner spent years of doing.
No, there's a lot of deferred maintenance and
deferred
stuff,
maintenance.
yeah.
So this is a concern.
We're just cautioning you that,
Yeah, we're certainly aware that if we went over the 50%, it would trigger all kinds of changes. If we want to stay certainly below that, that's why, and we kept the kind of site plan, the setup of the house is pretty much the same. We're not changing any of that. But no, the walls are going to stay. The lower floor walls are certainly going to stay.
The good news is they had it tented, so once you get it tented, you do take care of a lot of issues as opposed to,
yes,
locally treating things.
Right.
Do we have any more questions for the owner? No, thank you. Mr. Khudidadi, I'm not sure if you'd like to have any sort of a rebuttal. There was no comments made by anybody else. Okay, with that, I'll close the public portion. Mr. Mardian, you want to start us off? Since Mr. Malakian started us off twice.
No, I mean, I have no issues with the design as presented. I think you've done a very good job on presenting us this project with mass and scale as appropriate, the material choice. I do agree with the comments made about the chimney. You need to look at that. But one thing, I don't know how accurate this chimney is, but it feels to me that the chimney is a little too overpowering, too massive for the relationship to the house. I don't know if we could do anything to it, or maybe reduce that top a little, make it smaller. But that's the only comment I have, and if the board inclines to support this, I want to make sure that condition is added that the 50% will be checked during.
It always is during framing, and we usually get reports from the public before we do that. So.
Yeah. With that, I'm ready to support the project.
Thank you, Mr. Bolan.
I agree with Mr. Mardian. It's a well-designed project. I like the material. I like the mass and scale. I think it's everything is working together pretty much. And color palette, I'm not a crazy fan of the green, but I guess it works in this scheme, and if the owner likes it, that's what matters. And yeah, I'll support the project as well.
You mean you don't like the color of money?
I like money, I don't like the color.
Mr. Charchin.
Okay, so my biggest concern with this project is that I think it's going to be very, very difficult to build it without running into construction issues that are going to trigger the 50%. From the from just the demolition that you need to do of the non-conforming spaces that are going to trigger certain, patchwork and so forth on the walls that are remaining, to the fact that this is a very deferred, maintained property, and the fact that you're so close on your percentages. But I'm willing to leave that be to, the city inspectors, and if you're aware of it and you come back, that's That's the risks that we take. As far as design, the overall design is suitable, although the neighborhood does have a lot more story homes. I think the lot's location allows for a second story. It doesn't impose too much. The only issue I have is on the east elevation. There's a volume there that seems a little bit too massive to me. And in the past, what we've done here, for example, is expand the roof line to kind of close that space up.
We had a lot of trouble there.
This was something that was discussed quite a bit, and staff was really hoping to have that extension. However, that would project into the required 5-foot clearance. So they're already cutting back their stable, and they would have to, it's eave to eave, a required 5-foot clearance between the two structures.
The one way to address that would be to reduce the size of the exposed part of the balcony. No, the second floor balcony, if that portion of the wall came back. Some of the roof there, or Villia, am I wrong? Is that fascia?
It would
Not gonna
essentially
happen?
be,
I don't think so, Jay.
this is the portion that actually, you can tell here, and then it's cut back, because essentially what you're looking at would be this portion of the eave that
Clears the
that
5 feet.
that clears the 5 feet. And so, and that's the reason why it's sort of, the eave sort of goes around the stable, which I think we all agree, we would have rather have seen that type of eave that extends along the garage. However, that eats into the 5-foot clearance, which they're already cutting back the stable.
And I guess with the stable there, you don't see it.
It's blocked and it's next to the alley.
Yeah. But it's still,
It's
it's still
Agreed.
glaring out as a glaring
You
issue.
could still cut it 1 foot more on the stable if you choose to, but
And the other thing you can do is you can
There's no
extend
roof.
the roof line of the garage and get rid of that outside portion.
Does that mean it's your
sorry.
turn to talk, Mr.? You want to
No,
just
no,
keep
no,
on
I'm just,
going?
no.
I'm done. I overall, it's within the framework of things that we've approved before. I think it has some unique limitations because of the lot's shape, and the fact that there's an additional auxiliary structure in the stable, but overall, I think it's okay. But just keep an eye on that 50%. I would highly recommend that if you do trigger it, you should take steps yourself before the city takes steps, because we'll probably, if that does happen, I think it'll be a year and a half before we see you again. And no one wants to live without a roof.
I do.
No, just the question, recommendation.
About we did think that pulling back the second floor balcony could allow some of that garage roof to then slide across that point and possibly, break up that wall.
That's what I was saying, but that's what Mr. Charchin's question.
Right.
I was questioning it. How do we deal with it?
you're still gonna have that break if you do that. It's gonna have a roof, but you're not gonna have a
Right.
overhang.
Yeah, it'll be a strange roof because it wouldn't have.
I don't think we would have accomplished too much.
We could
It
also
would look
possibly.
very ornamental in a way.
It could be handled if possibly or a decorative trim horizontal piece came across the center, possibly bring some of the board and batten into the upper or lower section there. Just break it up a little.
Continue with the eave, you mean?
Yeah, where the fascia
like a
is,
change in
continue that with
material,
a flush board.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. That might achieve everyone's concerns and be an easy enough fix.
Are you done?
I'm fine with, I'm fine with,
I support the design. I think it's well done. You could tell a lot of detail has gone into it, and you could tell this has been going on for some time with all the different hearings and whatnot. It's tough for someone to be living there. So I support the project. I do think that eve going across would achieve everyone's concerns and be an easy enough fix. So hopefully you get it fixed quickly and designed and enjoy your home for a while. So I support the home
And I'll make the move.
with that one condition.
You'll make the move and the motion.
Motion.
It's a move.
Doesn't it feel like it's
like 10 or 11, even though it's not?
So I have a motion by Board Member Benlian. Is there a second to approve with that one condition?
But did we read the conditions?
I think the condition is some sort of a fascia or decorative material to go across to
Including the
continue the
chimney.
horizontal.
I was gonna,
Oh,
the
and the
chimney also,
chimney,
that's
the-
right. We
so
have the
two.
chimney condition, which I had.
But the condition, the chimney could be worked out with a gas fireplace.
Well, I was questioning the mass of it, the top piece.
The
If
design.
they
So what's
decide to
the
keep that thing is gonna be twice as tall.
It's gonna be so tall, it's gonna look crazy, so I think if the owner is willing to do a gas conversion, we solve the problem.
Well,
What problem?
So,
You want to
yeah.
come up real quick so we don't have
and I think
cross-communication?
Narig, why don't you join him?
Or Narig? Somebody from the owner side?
That's fine. Yeah,
Name
if
for
we
the
do
record if you
gas-
would.
Narig Kodadadi. If we do gas, obviously we can do a direct vent. So
And leave the chimney
and
as
leave
it
the
stands.
chimney, maybe a smaller decorative copper piece on top.
Or you may not even need anything on the top, unless you love it. Okay, so we can.
Better fit.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
I think we need to know if it's gonna be gas or is it gonna be, because if it's gonna be of wood burning, it's gonna be twice as tall.
Right,
You
yeah.
cannot have the roof, because right now your existing roof was flat roof, and the wood burning was 2 foot higher than the flat roof. Now that you're adding the second floor, that roof, or the chimney, by building code, that needs to be 2 foot higher than the closest roof. Now, what you're doing here is that most probably it's going to be gas burning fireplace. Now, if you decide to keep it as wood, then either raise that and probably come back, or go to the staff and show it. I doubt you can be able to build this with a brick and the block and everything else. They're not going to let you, because it's illegal now.
No, if
It's not allowed in California to have a wood burning fireplace.
you're allowed to keep your existing wood.
You are
burning,
allowed
but
to keep
modify it to
existing
some
and
degree.
modify it.
Just so the board knows how we would take this, if this hadn't come up tonight and they came back to us and said, oh, we forgot about the chimney and we're going to have to raise it another 15 feet, and we looked at it and said, that is the craziest thing, can we do gas? And they said, no, we want to keep it, we would bring something like that back to the board.
Right.
So,
Exactly. So,
That's fine.
Yeah, what if we condition that the applicant could choose to create a direct vent gas fireplace and keep the basic structure and the mass of it? And if they choose to go with a wood-burning fireplace, they'll have to work with staff.
I think they have no other
I
choice.
don't
I
think
mean,
there's a way to make a wood-burning fireplace look acceptable here.
There's
I'm saying
no
they
other
would
way.
work with
This
you
is-
on the
height?
height or whatever the design might be.
Right, but
He's gotta go all the way up to the second floor or not?
I think we could all visualize that the tall chimney on this house just isn't going to
I
work.
think we just
so.
leave it the way it is and then just convert it into gas, and for
Might be
now,
the
and then
easiest
if they
thing
decide,
this
then
moment.
That's the way to go.
it solves your
So we're
problem.
talking chimney, so are you going to cap it with the copper cap that you have in this
I
picture?
think it's more
Yeah.
appropriate, yeah.
I think
Or are
the
you gonna do
detail is
that?
going to be nice. I think the detail should stay. I just
Well, I'm
needs
just trying to
be-
figure out if it's that or that.
Well, that was supposed to be that, and then rendering.
That's just for the material he's showing.
So if
It
I,
does
No,
look like that.
he's saying that this is what we're
That's
going to
the
see on the top of that, or is it the
Similar to
material?
that. Oh, yeah, similar to that, yes.
The material.
but is that a shroud?
It's a
Or is
shroud.
the shape is taking place the same way? The
Yes,
shape?
on my,
But it's not curving on the elevation.
it goes in a little bit. It doesn't have that curve.
And then it has the two cylindrical spouts.
And you don't need the cylindrical.
So you're comfortable using a chimney cap that's of similar material and look as depicted on the material board, and we're okay converting the fire burning fireplace into a gas burning fireplace, and then we also have the one decorative fascia that goes across on that east facade to continue the horizontal look of the east
Right. We were going to probably, with your approval, write that a little more broadly to revise the design of that section of the wall next to the balcony to reduce its sense of mass, giving them the opportunity to think about, Chris had mentioned possibly an open railing or a partial open railing, or running the horizontal or changing cladding, just to give them a little more, unless you...
Running a board is fine.
Okay. Yeah, running the board's great if you want.
Well, seems like to be a general consensus with running
Then
the
we'll run the
board.
board?
It was your idea, Mr. Platt, we'll go with it. Let's condition
We like
running
to-
the
we
board,
like to
and that
give
way they
freedom.
don't have to come back.
Okay.
So then now, could we entertain a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second the motion.
I have a motion made by Board Member Benlian, a second by Board Member Mardian. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchin?
Yes.
Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
And Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0. And,
Have some minutes,
yes, we have the minutes from
June 14 and the 23rd.
actually June 23rd and July 14th, yes. And on June 23rd, Board members Mardian, Malikian, and Simonian were present. So I would need those gentlemen, again, that would be Mardian, Malikian, Simonian.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the 23rd.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Mardian, a second by Board Member Malikian. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Mardian,
Yes.
Malikian,
Yes.
and Chairman Simonian.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. And for the minutes of July the 14th, Board members Benlian, Malikian, Mardian, and Simonian were all present, and Board Member Charchian arrived. Yes, so all five board members were present. So,
Could I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of July 14th.
a motion, but,
I'll say
okay. So in terms of motion by Board Member Charchin, a second by Board Member Benlian, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchin?
Yes.
Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
And Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
The motion passes to approve the minutes 5-0. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, at
Adjourn.
7:40. Thank you very much.